They sold her like livestock. Not because she was weak, but because she was exactly what terrified them most, an alpha female who refused to break. Alora Veyne spent 23 years believing pack meant family, loyalty meant protection, until the night her own blood chained her wrists and traded her life for political convenience. Now she's being dragged through frozen wasteland toward Blackridge Fortress, where the Wolf King himself waits. A ruler so brutal that even enemy kingdoms whisper his name like a curse. But here's what nobody expected. The monster they feared might be the only one who sees her worth. Stick around until the end of this story, hit that like button, and drop your city in the comments so I know where my pack is watching from. Because what happens when two alphas collide is about to rewrite every rule you thought you knew about power. The iron collar had rubbed Alora's throat raw 3 days ago. Now it just bled. She'd stopped feeling her fingers somewhere around dawn. The shackles connecting her wrists behind her back had frozen into the rope burns underneath, metal and flesh becoming one continuous line of damage. Every step through snow that reached past her knees sent fresh waves of pain up legs that had gone numb hours earlier. The prisoner's shift they'd dressed her in before loading her onto the wagon did absolutely nothing against wind that felt like it was stripping skin off bone. 4 other prisoners stumbled ahead of her on the chain line. 1 woman, 3 men. All of them had stopped talking yesterday, just kept their heads down and walked, breath coming out in short, desperate gasps that turned to ice in the air. Alora didn't waste energy on talking either. She was too busy doing math. 4 days since Silver Pine's Council of Elders sold her like spoiled meat. 3 days of forced march through mountain passes that killed weaker prisoners every few hours. 2 days until they reached Blackridge Fortress, according to the guards. And exactly 0 chances of rescue because the people who should have protected her were the same ones who'd fastened these chains. The math was pretty clear. She was dead, just hadn't stopped breathing yet. Carrick, the guard captain leading this nightmare parade, yanked the chain hard enough to send the prisoner in front of Alora crashing face first into the snow. The woman didn't get up, just lay there making sounds that weren't quite words anymore. More like the noise prey makes when it finally understands the predator has won. Carrick walked past without slowing, left her there to freeze. Alora stepped over the body carefully, kept moving. Because here was survival lesson number 1 that nobody taught you until it was too late. You don't stop for the dying when you're still trying to stay alive yourself. Brutal? Absolutely. But she'd learned a lot about brutality in the past 4 days. Learned that loyalty was just a story people told themselves right up until it became expensive. Learned that pack meant nothing when politics required sacrifice. Learned that the wolves who smiled while fastening your collar hurt worse than the ones who came at you teeth first. Her uncle had done the honors personally. Elder Voss, the man who'd taught her to set broken bones when she was 8 years old, who'd praised her healing gift, told her she had her grandmother's talent, promised she'd take a seat on the Healers' Council someday. Right up until the moment Blackridge demanded payment for some ancient debt nobody even remembered starting. Then suddenly Alora's talent didn't matter, her bloodline didn't matter. 23 years of service to Silverpine got erased because some Wolf King 200 miles north wanted compensation, and the council decided living currency was cheaper than gold. Voss had looked her in the eyes while locking the collar, whispered something about greater good and pack survival like those words made betrayal noble. Like dressing up murder in ceremony somehow made it less obscene. Alora had screamed at him that this was execution wearing a political mask, that he was trading her life for convenience, that she'd remember his face in whatever hell came next. He'd walked away without answering, left her chained in the wagon. And that was when she'd finally understood the truth that changes everything once you see it. People are only loyal until loyalty costs them something real. Then suddenly you're disposable, tradable, sacrifice dressed up in noble language by cowards who can't even watch you leave without flinching. So yeah, she'd stopped believing in rescue pretty fast after that. The wind picked up, howling through the pass like something with teeth. Alora tucked her chin and kept walking. Her body was shutting down. Hypothermia was probably setting in. Frostbite had definitely claimed a few toes. But she refused to fall. Wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Because the thing about being sold by your own people is it clarifies certain truths real fast. Strips away all the comforting lies. You learn exactly who you are when everything gets taken. Title, family, future. all gone. What remains is just you and one very simple question. What are you actually made of when there's nothing left to hide behind? Alora was discovering she was made of something meaner than anyone expected, including herself. The prisoner ahead of her, the one who'd fallen, hadn't moved in 10 minutes. Definitely dead now. Carrick didn't bother checking, just unhooked her chain from the line and kept marching. The body disappeared into the snow like it had never existed. 2 days to Blackridge, Carrick announced that morning while kicking snow over their campfire. 2 days and this cargo gets delivered. Cargo. Not prisoners. Not even people. Cargo. Alora had swallowed the rage building in her throat and stayed quiet. Because survival lesson number 2, anger is only useful if you keep it cold. Hot rage gets you killed fast. Cold rage keeps you sharp. And she was going to need every bit of sharpness she had left when they reached that fortress, wherever the hell Blackridge actually was, because all she'd seen for 3 days was snow, mountains, and more snow. Then they crested the ridge, and Alora finally understood why every story about Blackridge started with the same phrase: the fortress where nightmares learn to build walls. Blackridge materialized out of the mountains like something carved by a god who'd given up on mercy halfway through creation. Black stone walls at least 50 feet high, guard towers that looked like broken teeth stabbing at the sky, torchlight flickering from battlements where soldiers paced in formation so precise they looked like they'd been doing it since birth. The entire structure radiated one very clear message: come here to die screaming. Alora's stomach dropped straight through the snow beneath her feet. She'd heard stories about this place her entire life, the kingdom where children learned to worship pain before they learned their own names, where weakness got you executed in the training yards as a lesson, where the Wolf King himself supposedly killed anyone who showed mercy because mercy was corruption and corruption was death. Every frontier pack told their young ones horror stories about Blackridge. Use it as a threat. Behave, or we'll send you north where the wolves eat their own wounded. And now she was being dragged straight into its heart. The 3 remaining prisoners had gone completely silent. One of them was crying without sound, tears freezing on his face. Another was muttering under her breath, not quite prayers, more like bargaining with death itself. Alora just stared at the fortress and thought, so this is where I die. At least now she knew for certain. Carrick pulled them to a halt about 50 yards from the main gates, drew his sword and slammed it against his shield 3 times. The sound echoed off stone like thunder announcing judgment. Nothing happened for a long moment. Then the gates opened. 6 warriors emerged, walking in formation that spoke of countless battles. These weren't regular soldiers. Alora could tell the difference immediately, even through exhaustion. These were Blackridge elites, the kind of fighters who'd killed so many times they stopped counting. Each one moved like violence wrapped in skin. Scars decorated their faces like medals earned through surviving what should have been fatal. Their eyes held that flat, empty look you only get from seeing too much death and deciding life was overrated anyway. And leading them was someone who made every survival instinct Alora possessed scream run. He stood at least 6'4", built like a predator designed specifically for killing and nothing else. Black hair pulled back from a face that could have been handsome if it wasn't so completely terrifying. Silver eyes that swept over the prisoners like he was evaluating livestock quality at market. He wore authority the way other people wore clothes, naturally, without thought, absolute. This wasn't the Wolf King. Alora knew that immediately. This was something worse. The executioner, the monster who did dirty work so the throne could stay clean. Carrick dropped to one knee fast, addressed the man with his head bowed and his voice careful. Lord Darius, Silverpine sends payment as agreed. 4 prisoners to settle the debt. The silver-eyed warrior, Darius, didn't acknowledge the greeting, just walked down the line of prisoners slowly, studying each one with the focus of someone selecting which cut of meat to buy for dinner. He stopped in front of the crying man, tilted his head slightly like he was considering something interesting. The prisoner immediately started begging, "Please, please, I have children. I'll work. I'll do anything. Please don't." Darius slit his throat without hesitation. The body dropped. Blood spread across white snow in a pattern that looked almost beautiful in the fading light. Arterial spray creating art nobody asked for. The other prisoners started screaming. Darius cleaned his blade on the dead man's shirt and moved to the next person in line. Alora forced herself to breathe slowly. Don't react. Don't show fear. Predators smell fear, and it makes them hungry. Darius killed the second prisoner just as efficiently, then the third. Each execution precise, practiced, emotionless, like trimming weeds from a garden. He didn't even seem to enjoy it, just performed murder with the same casual competence someone else might use to chop firewood. 3 bodies now, 3 pools of blood steaming in cold air. Then he reached Alora. She met his eyes directly, didn't lower her gaze, didn't beg, didn't cry, just stood there covered in other people's blood and stared at him like she was already dead. So what exactly did he think he could take from her that wasn't already gone? Something flickered across Darius's expression. Not mercy. Definitely not that. Closer to curiosity. The way a wolf might pause over prey that smelled wrong somehow. Interesting instead of easy. He circled her slowly, studying, evaluating, looking for the thing that made her different from the other 3 corpses bleeding out in the snow. Finally, he spoke. His voice came out rough, like he didn't use it often. You're different. Alora said nothing. Darius stepped closer, close enough she could smell leather and smoke and something else underneath, old blood maybe. Lots of it. Most prisoners piss themselves before I reach them. You haven't even flinched. Still, she stayed silent. Darius smiled. It didn't touch his eyes. You think silence makes you brave? Or are you just too stupid to understand what's happening here? And that was when the rage Alora had been keeping frozen for 4 days finally cracked through her control. She spoke for the first time since leaving Silverpine. Her voice came out hoarse but clear and absolutely done with this entire nightmare. I understand exactly what's happening. You're a butcher wearing a crown, pretending slaughter is strategy. You're so terrified of anything resembling humanity that you kill it before it reminds you what you've become. Every person in this fortress is already dead. They just haven't stopped breathing yet. So go ahead, cut my throat. Add me to your collection. But don't insult me by pretending you're anything other than a coward with a sword who mistakes violence for strength. The words hung in frozen air like smoke. Carrick had gone completely white. The other Blackridge warriors exchanged glances that suggested they were already placing bets on how creative Darius's revenge would be, how long he'd make her scream before finishing it. But Darius just stared at her, really looked at her for the first time, like she'd said something nobody had dared say in years, something that cut through the routine of execution and landed somewhere unexpected. Then he did something that shocked everyone present. He laughed. Not cruel laughter, not mocking. Genuine surprise mixed with something that might have been respect if you squinted hard enough, like he'd just heard the first interesting thing in months of tedious silence. When he finally stopped, he shook his head slowly. You've got teeth, I'll give you that. Stupid teeth that are going to get you killed, but teeth nonetheless. He turned to Carrick without taking his eyes off Alora. Tell Silverpine their debt is paid. We'll keep this one. Carrick bowed quickly, retreated with his remaining guards before anyone could change their mind. The sound of horses disappeared into mountains within minutes, leaving Alora alone with 6 killers and a fortress full of nightmares. Darius gestured to 2 of his warriors. Chain her properly. Take her to holding. His eyes found Alora's again, and this time there was something almost like appreciation mixed with the threat. You just bought yourself a longer death, healer. Hope it was worth the speech. The guards grabbed her arms, started dragging her toward those massive gates. And Alora realized with perfect clarity that she'd just made either the smartest or stupidest decision of her life. Possibly both. The holding cells beneath Blackridge Fortress smelled like despair mixed with old iron, and something else Alora didn't want to identify. They'd stripped her down to bare skin, checked every inch for weapons, hidden magic, anything that might make her dangerous. Found nothing except scars from healer training and the fresh damage from 4 days in chains. Then they'd thrown a rough shirt at her and shoved her into a stone box barely large enough to lie down in. No windows. No light except the torch flickering somewhere down the corridor. No blankets. Just cold and darkness, and the sound of water dripping from stones she couldn't see. Alora pressed her back against the wall and wrapped her arms around her knees. Tried to conserve what little body heat she had left. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from cold and exhaustion and 4 days of near starvation. She needed sleep, needed food, needed about 1,000 things she wasn't going to get. But more than any of that, she needed to think, because something was very wrong with what had just happened. Darius had killed 3 prisoners without hesitation, without asking their names or crimes or anything. Just execution as greeting. But he'd kept her alive. Not out of mercy. Blackridge clearly didn't understand that concept. So why? What made her different enough to delay the inevitable? The answer came slowly, pulled from memories of her grandmother's lessons about pack politics, about how alpha predators sometimes kept interesting prey alive longer than necessary. Not because they were soft, because they were strategic, testing, evaluating, seeing how long something would last before it broke. Darius was playing with her, seeing how many days she'd survive before fear destroyed whatever defiance made her interesting. He'd keep her alive exactly as long as she remained entertaining, which meant surviving meant staying dangerous enough that boredom didn't set in. Most people would have found that realization terrifying. Alora found it almost comforting, because she understood dangerous, had been practicing it her whole life without permission. Every time Silver Pine's elders told her to lower her voice, soften her opinions, make herself smaller so the male healers wouldn't feel threatened. Every time they punished her for being too smart, too direct, too unwilling to pretend weakness was the same as wisdom. They'd spent 23 years trying to convince her that survival meant submission. Bend, break, disappear. Turns out survival actually meant figuring out how to be terrifying enough that predators thought twice before eating you. Hours passed. Maybe days. Time got slippery in complete darkness, with nothing to mark its passage except the rhythm of her own breathing. Alora dozed in short, uncomfortable bursts, startled awake every time she heard footsteps in the corridor. But nobody came. They just left her there, marinating in cold and uncertainty, waiting to see if isolation would crack her faster than threats. It might have worked on someone who still believed rescue was possible, but Alora had already accepted she was alone, had accepted it the moment Voss locked that collar. So the darkness didn't break her, just made her sharper, angrier, more determined to make them regret keeping her alive. She was working through her 3rd impossible escape scenario when she heard the sound. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Heavy boots on stone, heading directly toward her cell. Alora pushed herself upright, forced her exhausted body into readiness. If they were coming to kill her now, she'd at least make them work for it. Maybe get in one good hit before they finished her. The door opened. Torchlight flooded in, blinding after so long in darkness. Alora blinked against the glare, trying to see who'd come for her. Not Darius. Someone else. Someone who radiated power so complete it made Darius look like a practice sketch. The Wolf King himself had come to the dungeons. Ronan Kael stepped into her cell with the easy confidence of someone who'd never encountered a door he couldn't walk through. He was bigger than his brother, taller, broader, built like violence had been bred into his bones over generations. Dark hair, sharp features that looked like they'd been carved out of the same stone as the fortress walls, and eyes that glowed silver in torchlight, studying her with an intensity that made Alora feel like he was reading her entire history in the space between heartbeats. Scars decorated his hands and forearms. Not random, deliberate, the kind you only got from surviving battles that should have been fatal. But what struck Alora most wasn't his size or his scars, or even the way his warriors stood behind him like they'd follow him into actual hell without question. It was the control. Every movement calculated, every expression locked down tight, every breath measured. He looked at her the way scholars looked at ancient texts, analyzing, assessing, learning, trying to solve a puzzle that hadn't revealed its pattern yet. And underneath all that control, she could sense something else. Something massive and hungry that he kept chained so tightly most people probably never noticed it was there. This was not a man who'd become king by accident. This was someone who'd clawed his way to the throne and then spent every day since making sure nobody could take it from him. The silence stretched. Alora refused to break it first. If he'd come all the way down here, he wanted something. Let him work for it. Finally, Ronan spoke. His voice came out low and rough, like he'd spent too many years shouting orders across battlefields. My brother tells me you called him a coward. Alora didn't flinch. I called him a coward, wearing a crown. There's a difference. The corner of Ronan's mouth twitched. Might have been amusement. Hard to tell with someone who probably hadn't smiled genuinely in years. And what would you call me? She met his eyes directly, studied him the same way he was studying her, saw exhaustion buried under layers of control, saw something that might have been curiosity before he locked it down, saw a ruler who'd built an empire on fear because he was terrified of what happened when people stopped being afraid. Someone who thinks control is the same as strength, she said quietly. Someone who built an empire on fear because he's terrified of what happens if people stop being afraid of him. The temperature in the cell dropped about 10 degrees. Ronan's warriors shifted their hands toward weapons. The message was clear. One word from their king, and she'd die before finishing her next breath. But Ronan himself just kept staring at her with that terrifying focus. "You realize I could have you flayed alive for saying that," he said, voice absolutely calm, like he was discussing weather. "Yes." "You realize nobody in this fortress would stop me?" "Yes." His eyes narrowed slightly. "So why say it?" "Because I'm already dead," Alora said. "Your brother made that clear. So I might as well use my last words to say something true instead of begging for mercy I'm never going to get. At least then I die honest instead of pathetic." The silence that followed felt like it had weight, physical pressure in the air. Then Ronan did something that shocked everyone present, possibly including himself. He laughed, not the cruel sound Darius had made. Something closer to genuine surprise mixed with exhaustion, like he'd just heard something that cut through years of carefully maintained control and landed somewhere unexpected. When he finally stopped, he shook his head slowly. "You're either the bravest person I've met in years, or the stupidest. I haven't decided which yet." "Probably both," Alora said. That got another laugh. Shorter this time, almost involuntary. Ronan turned to his guards without warning. "Remove her chains, take her to the old healer's quarters in the east wing. Give her food, clean clothes, medical supplies." His eyes found Alora's again. "You want to survive Blackridge? Prove you're useful. We lost our head healer 3 months ago. You're going to replace him." Alora's mind raced. This wasn't execution, wasn't even slavery. This was, what exactly? A test? A trap? Some kind of game where she didn't know the rules yet? She forced herself to ask the obvious question. "And if I refuse?" Ronan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then you die slowly instead of quickly. Choose fast. I have better things to do than stand in dungeons arguing with corpses." The guards moved toward her. Alora had maybe 3 seconds to make a decision that would determine whether she lived through the night or died screaming in this cell. Every instinct screamed this was a trap, that accepting meant walking deeper into the nightmare, that she should refuse, force them to kill her cleanly, end this horror before it got worse. But underneath the fear, something else whispered, something that sounded suspiciously like her grandmother's voice during healing lessons years ago. "Survival isn't about avoiding battlefields, child. It's about choosing which wars are worth fighting." Alora looked at the Wolf King, saw exhaustion buried under control, saw something that might have been curiosity before he locked it away, saw a ruler who just offered her life when execution would have been easier. She made her choice. "Fine," she said. "I'll heal your warriors. But I do it my way. No interference, no supervision, no questions about my methods. And if anyone tries to hurt me while I'm working, I'll make sure they regret it creatively." The guards looked at each other like she'd just declared war on gravity itself, but Ronan just nodded once. "Fair enough. Break my rules, you die. Disrespect my authority, you die. 'Cause problems, you die. But follow those simple guidelines and you might survive longer than a week." He turned toward the door, paused. "One more thing. My brother thinks keeping you alive is entertaining. Prove him wrong. Prove you're actually useful instead of just loud. Because the moment you stop being worth the trouble, I'll let Darius finish what he started at those gates." Then he was gone, taking his warriors and his terrifying presence with him, leaving Alora alone with the sudden realization that she'd just agreed to become healer to the most brutal kingdom on the frontier. And the Wolf King himself had just made her survival his personal responsibility, which meant she'd either just saved her own life or signed the most creative death warrant in Blackridge's history. The healer's quarters turned out to be a suite of rooms in the East Wing that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. The guards who escorted Alora there didn't speak, just unlocked the door, gestured her inside, and posted themselves in the corridor like they expected her to try escaping through solid stone walls. Alora stepped into what had clearly once been someone's life work. The main room was large, dominated by a fireplace that still had old ash in it. Shelves lined every wall, most of them empty now, but a few still holding ancient medical texts and dried herbs that had probably lost all potency years ago. A large table in the center was scarred from countless procedures, bloodstains nobody had bothered cleaning, burn marks from cauterization tools. Two smaller rooms branched off, one set up as sleeping quarters with a bed that looked reasonably clean, the other filled with more shelves, a sink, and what looked like it had been an extensive herb garden before it died from neglect. Someone had lived here, worked here, built something important here, and then either died or left, and nobody had bothered replacing them. A knock on the door. One of the guards entered carrying a tray of food and a bundle of clothes, set both down on the table without meeting her eyes. Walked out. Alora stared at the food. Bread, cheese, some kind of meat, water. More than she'd eaten in 4 days combined. Her stomach cramped just looking at it. She forced herself to eat slowly. Small bites. Body was too shocked for anything more. While she ate, she studied the room more carefully, looking for exits that didn't exist, weapons that weren't there, anything that might give her an advantage when this inevitable trap finally sprung, because it was definitely a trap. Kings didn't offer mercy, especially not kings named Wolf who built empires on fear. So what was Ronan actually doing? Testing her? Seeing if she'd try to escape so he had an excuse to hunt her down? Or was this something else entirely? Some political game she didn't understand yet. The clothes turned out to be simple but clean. Pants, shirt, boots that almost fit. Better than the prisoner's shift by a long shot. Alora changed quickly, finally feeling something close to human again. Then she started going through the shelves. Most of the medical supplies were useless. Dried herbs too old to work. Tools rusted beyond repair. Books with pages so brittle they'd crumble if you looked at them too hard. But some things were salvageable. Basic instruments, a few containers that might hold fresh supplies if she could get them. Enough to work with if she was careful. She was examining an ancient anatomy text when she heard voices in the corridor outside. Move. Now. I don't care if you're scheduled for duty. I said move. That was Darius's voice. Sharp, commanding, used to being obeyed immediately. Footsteps retreating. Then the door opened without knocking. Darius stood in the doorway, studying her with that same predatory focus from earlier. He'd cleaned the blood off his blade, but not changed his clothes. Still wore other people's death like cologne. Comfortable? He asked, voice dripping something that wasn't quite mockery. Alora set down the book carefully. About as comfortable as anyone gets in a cell with better furniture. Darius smiled. It looked wrong on his face, like something he'd learned to do without understanding why. My brother has unusual ideas about mercy. Personally, I would have killed you at the gates, saved everyone the trouble of what comes next. And what comes next? You disappoint him, Darius said simply. You prove you're just noise without substance. And then I get to finish the conversation we started in the snow. He studied the room with distaste. He put you in Elena's quarters. Did he tell you that? Alora shook her head. Our previous healer, Darius continued. Brilliant woman. Saved lives everyone else gave up on. My father was obsessed with her, visited constantly, believed she could heal anything if given enough time. His smile turned cruel. Then she tried healing him, tried fixing whatever was broken inside the great King Aldrich Kael. Didn't work out well for her. What happened? Darius's eyes went flat. He killed her in a rage. Right in this room. Blood took weeks to scrub out of those floorboards. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. You want to know why my brother really brought you here? It's not mercy, it's nostalgia. You remind him of Elena, that same stupid defiance, that same belief that healing can fix what's fundamentally broken. He's giving you her quarters because he wants to see if you'll end up the same way she did. The words hung in the air like a curse. Alora forced herself to meet his eyes. Your brother doesn't strike me as the nostalgic type. He's not, Darius agreed. He's the practical type, which makes this little experiment even more interesting. He's testing something. Maybe testing himself. Maybe testing you. Either way, it ends the same. You die in these rooms just like Elena did, probably screaming just like she did. And my brother goes back to being the Wolf King everyone fears. He turned toward the door. Sleep well, healer. Tomorrow you start proving you're worth keeping alive. Then he was gone, leaving Alora alone in quarters that had apparently been a previous healer's tomb. She walked slowly to the main table, ran her fingers over those old bloodstains, thought about the woman who'd died here. Elena, who'd apparently believed she could heal the Wolf King's father and paid for that belief with her life. And now Ronan had installed Alora in the exact same space, either as warning or invitation, maybe both. She moved to the small window and looked out at Blackridge. The fortress sprawled below, torchlight marking training yards where warriors practiced killing each other, guard towers where soldiers paced endless routes, walls that had probably seen more death than most battlefields. This was the empire she'd just agreed to serve, a kingdom built on pain, ruled by fear, maintained through violence so absolute it had become culture. And somewhere in this nightmare, a king who'd offered her life instead of execution, who'd given her the quarters of a dead healer and told her to prove herself useful. Alora pressed her forehead against cold glass. She should have let Darius kill her at the gates, should have taken the quick death instead of accepting this elaborate torture. But she hadn't. And now she was trapped inside Blackridge with two brothers who embodied different kinds of monster and absolutely no idea which one was more dangerous. Behind her, the door clicked shut, locked from outside, trapping her inside these rooms until someone decided otherwise. Alora closed her eyes and thought, "What the hell have I gotten myself into?" She didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Darius killing those prisoners, saw blood spreading across snow, saw her own face reflected in his blade before he cleaned it. So she stayed awake, went through every shelf, every drawer, every container, taking inventory of what she had to work with, which wasn't much, but was better than nothing. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through the single window. Alora watched the fortress wake up. Warriors emerging for morning training, guards changing shifts, servants carrying supplies, the whole machine of Blackridge starting another day of carefully organized violence. A knock on the door. Different guard from yesterday. He entered without waiting for permission, carrying another tray of food and a folded piece of paper. The Wolf King requires your presence in the main hall immediately after breakfast. Be ready. He left before she could ask questions. Alora unfolded the paper. It was a hand-drawn map of the fortress, her quarters marked in the east wing, the main hall circled in the center, a path drawn in red ink connecting the two. No words, no explanation, just, here's where you are, here's where you're going, figure it out. She ate quickly, dressed, studied the map until she had the route memorized, then stepped into the corridor where two guards waited to escort her. They walked in silence through stone hallways that all looked identical, past training yards where warriors beat each other bloody, while instructors shouted encouragement, past rooms where she caught glimpses of what looked like torture chambers but were probably just standard discipline facilities in a place like this. Finally, they reached massive double doors. The guards pushed them open. The main hall was exactly what you'd expect from a kingdom built on domination. Enormous space with high ceilings, banners hanging from walls showing battles Blackridge had won over the centuries. And at the far end, a throne that looked like it was made from weapons. Swords, axes, spears, all melted together into something that was equal parts seat and warning. Ronan sat on that throne like he'd been born there. Around him stood maybe 30 warriors, battle-hardened, scarred, each one looking at Alora like she was either prey or entertainment, possibly both. And standing directly beside the throne, wearing an expression of pure anticipation, was Darius. Ronan's voice carried across the hall easily. Alora Veyne. Silverpine's payment. My brother believes keeping you alive is amusing. I believe you might actually be useful. Today we find out which of us is right. Alora walked forward slowly, stopped about 20 feet from the throne, close enough to hear clearly, far enough to run if this went bad. What do you want? She asked. Ronan gestured to his warriors. 300 soldiers live in this fortress. They train constantly, fight constantly, injure each other constantly because that's how we maintain the best fighting force on the frontier. Our previous healer kept them functional, kept infection from killing more warriors than actual combat. kept this machine running smoothly. His eyes locked onto hers. You're going to do the same, starting now. He nodded to someone Alora couldn't see. Two warriors dragged a third forward. The injured one was young, maybe 19, and bleeding from a deep gash across his ribs. Training accident based on the looks of it. Bad one. The kind that would get infected fast if not treated properly. They threw him down in front of Alora. The young warrior bit back a scream. Heal him, Ronan said simply. Here. Now. In front of everyone. Show me you're worth the air you're breathing. Alora looked at the injured warrior, looked at the throne. Looked at Darius's anticipation. This was the test, the real one. Not whether she could heal. Ronan already knew she was trained for that. This was about whether she'd perform on command like a trained animal, whether she'd accept her place in Blackridge's hierarchy, whether she'd bend. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to tell Ronan she wasn't a circus act, to maintain some shred of dignity even if it got her killed. But then she looked at the young warrior again. Really looked at him. Saw pain. Saw fear. Saw someone who'd been hurt in service to this nightmare empire and was now being used as a test subject. And Alora realized something important. This wasn't about her pride. Wasn't about proving points to kings. This was about a 19-year-old kid bleeding out on cold stone while politicians played games with his life. She'd already lost everything that mattered. Pride, freedom, future, all gone. What remained was just one simple choice. Let someone die to make a statement, or save them and deal with consequences later. Put like that, it wasn't really a choice at all. Alora dropped to her knees beside the injured warrior, ripped his shirt open to expose the wound. It was deep, probably hit muscle, definitely going to get infected if left alone. I need clean water, she said, voice steady. Bandages. Needle and thread if you have them. Alcohol if you've got anything strong enough to sterilize. Nobody moved. Everyone just stared at her like she'd given orders to the Wolf King himself. Now, Alora said, unless you want this kid to die, proving whatever point you're trying to make. Ronan gestured once. Warriors scrambled to find supplies. While they did, Alora focused on the injured warrior, spoke quietly so only he could hear. What's your name? Kieran, he gasped. All right, Kieran, this is going to hurt like hell, but I'm going to fix you. You understand? He nodded, sweat pouring down his face. Good. Now here's what we're going to do together. You're going to breathe slowly, focus on my voice, and when I tell you to scream, you scream as loud as you want. No shame in that. Pain is just your body telling you it's still fighting. You hear me? I hear you. The supplies arrived. Alora worked fast, cleaned the wound despite Kieran's muffled screams, stitched it closed with steady hands that didn't shake despite 30 warriors watching her every move, bandaged it tight, spoke to him constantly, keeping his focus on her voice instead of the pain. 20 minutes later, she sat back, exhausted, covered in blood, but the wound was closed, clean. Kieran was still breathing. She looked up at Ronan. He needs rest, clean water, food. Change those bandages twice a day. Watch for infection. He'll live. Ronan studied her in silence for a long moment, then nodded once. Get him to the barracks. He turned his attention back to Alora. You've proven you can follow basic healing procedures. Congratulations. Now comes the hard part. What's that? Doing it 300 more times, Ronan said, for warriors who've been trained to hide injury, who see admission of pain as weakness, who would rather die than let anyone think they need help. His smile was cold. Welcome to Blackridge, healer. Hope you survive your first week. The warriors began filing out. Darius lingered, studying her with that same predatory interest. Then he leaned close and whispered, Elena made it 6 weeks before my father killed her. Let's see if you beat her record. Then he was gone too. Leaving Alora alone in that massive hall, kneeling in another person's blood, surrounded by weapons melted into furniture, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to. And in the corridors beyond, she heard it starting. Voices. Warriors arguing, someone shouting about tradition, another voice defending what she'd done. The fortress was already dividing over her presence, and she'd been here less than 24 hours. Alora looked down at her bloody hands and thought, they're going to tear this place apart, and somehow I'm going to be standing right in the middle when it happens. Alora spent the first 3 days learning exactly how deep the rot in Blackridge actually went. Not the obvious rot. Everyone could see that. The execution chambers. The training yards where warriors beat each other until bones broke. The casual violence woven into every conversation like it was punctuation. No, the real rot was quieter, more insidious. It lived in the way injured warriors hid their wounds until infection set in, and how soldiers would rather die than admit pain because admission meant weakness, and weakness meant you weren't worth keeping alive. It lived in the eyes of children who'd been taught that suffering was sacred and mercy was corruption. Blackridge hadn't just built an empire on violence. It had convinced people that violence was the only thing keeping them safe. And Alora was supposed to heal inside that system without changing it, which was like trying to stop bleeding without addressing the knife still stuck in the wound. She worked from the healer's quarters, door open, waiting for warriors to come. Some did. Most didn't. The ones who showed up came late at night when nobody would see them, slipped in like they were committing crimes. Infections that had been festering for weeks, broken bones that had set wrong. Wounds they'd hidden so long that treatment became 10 times harder than it should have been. Alora treated them all without judgment, fixed what she could, sent them away with instructions they probably wouldn't follow, because following meant admitting they needed help. It was exhausting work, not physically, emotionally, because every warrior who walked through her door was proof that Blackridge's greatest enemy wasn't the kingdoms beyond its borders. It was the culture inside its own walls. On the fourth morning, Alora was organizing medical supplies when she heard voices in the corridor outside. Young voices. Children. She stepped to the doorway, found 3 kids standing there staring at her like she might eat them. 2 boys and a girl, none older than 10. All of them had the same wariness in their eyes. The look children get when they've learned adults are dangerous. "Can I help you?" Alora asked, keeping her voice gentle. The girl stepped forward. She had a bandage wrapped around her hand. Crude work, probably done by another child. "Is it true you fix people?" "Sometimes. Depends what's broken." The girl unwrapped the bandage, revealed a deep cut across her palm. Recent. Maybe 2 days old, already showing signs of infection. "How did that happen?" Alora asked. "Training," the girl said, voice flat, like she was reporting weather. "We were practicing knife work. I dropped mine. Instructor said only weak warriors drop weapons, so he cut me to teach me better." The casual brutality of that statement hit Alora like a physical blow. An adult had deliberately injured a child as punishment for a mistake, and this child was reporting it like it was normal, expected, deserved. She forced herself to breathe slowly. "Come inside. All of you." The children exchanged glances. The boys looked ready to run, but the girl nodded and walked in. The boys followed reluctantly. Alora gestured to the main table. "Sit. Let me see that hand properly." While she cleaned and treated the wound, she studied the children. They all had scars. Some fresh, some old. Battle damage on kids who should have been playing instead of training to kill. "What are your names?" she asked while working. "Mira," the girl said. "That's Cullen and Jax." The boys nodded but didn't speak. Alora finished bandaging Mira's hand properly. "There. Change that twice a day. Keep it clean. Come back if you see red streaks or it starts smelling bad. That means infection." Mira studied the bandage like it was something precious. "Thank you. You're welcome." Alora paused, chose her next words carefully. "That instructor who cut you. What's his name?" "Why?" Mira asked, voice immediately suspicious. "Because I'm going to have a conversation with him about teaching methods." "You can't," Jack said suddenly. First words he'd spoken. "If you challenge him, he'll kill you. That's how it works here." Alora met his eyes. "Maybe. Or maybe he'll learn that cutting children has consequences." The kid stared at her like she'd suggested flying to the moon. Finally, Cullen spoke. "You're not from here, are you?" "No. That's why you don't understand," Mira said quietly. "Pain is how we learn. Suffering makes us strong. Everyone knows that." "Who told you that?" "Everyone." "And do you believe it?" Mira hesitated, glanced at the boys, then back at Alora. "I don't know what else to believe." Those words stayed with Alora long after the children left, echoed in her head while she worked, while she ate, while she lay awake that night staring at the ceiling. I don't know what else to believe. That was Blackridge's real power. Not the walls, not the warriors, not even the Wolf King himself. It was the fact that they'd convinced an entire generation that suffering was sacred, that pain was the only path to strength, that anything resembling kindness was weakness that deserved destruction. They'd built a culture where children couldn't imagine alternatives to violence because violence was all they'd ever known. And that realization clarified something important for Alora. She couldn't just heal bodies in this place. She had to heal the ideas that kept breaking them, which meant going to war with the entire foundation of Blackridge's empire. The confrontation came faster than she expected. Alora was treating a warrior's infected shoulder wound the next afternoon when Darius walked in without knocking. He stood in the doorway, watching her work with that predatory focus that made her skin crawl. She ignored him, finished cleaning the wound, bandaged it, sent the warrior away with instructions. Only then did she acknowledge Darius. "Something you need?" "I hear you've been treating children," he said. Voice casual. Too casual. "Yes, without permission." "I wasn't aware healing required permission." Darius stepped fully into the room, closed the door behind him. "Everything requires permission in Blackridge, especially when it involves undermining our training protocols." Alora met his eyes directly. "If your training protocols involve deliberately injuring children, then yes, I'm undermining them, proudly." The temperature dropped. Darius moved closer. Close enough she could see the flatness in his silver eyes, the complete absence of anything resembling empathy. "You don't understand what we're building here," he said quietly. "Every warrior in this fortress is a weapon. Weapons need to be forged through fire, hardened through pain. If we coddle them, if we let them believe comfort is possible, we create weak soldiers who die the first time they face real battle." "You're creating damaged people who've forgotten how to be human," Alora said. "There's a difference between strength and trauma, between training and torture." "No," Darius said. "There isn't. Not in a world where survival requires being harder than everything trying to kill you." His smile was cold. "But you'll learn." Elena thought she could change things too. Thought she could heal my father's anger, soften Blackridge's traditions. She lasted 6 weeks before reality caught up. What happened to her? Darius's expression didn't change. She pushed too hard, said the wrong thing at the wrong time. My father lost control during one of his episodes and killed her in this room. Took 4 warriors to pull him off the body. Alora forced herself not to react. "And your brother? Where was he?" "Watching," Darius said simply. "Learning what happens when healers forget their place. He's king now because he understood that lesson. Understood that Blackridge survives by being more brutal than everything around it." His eyes locked onto hers. "You want to survive? Stop trying to save people who don't want saving. Do your job. Heal bodies. Keep your mouth shut about everything else." He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. "Fair warning, healer. Children talk. Word spreads. Keep questioning our methods, and eventually you'll say something in front of the wrong person. Then I'll have to kill you. And unlike my brother, I won't hesitate." Then he was gone, leaving Alora alone with the knowledge that she was walking a razor's edge. Push too hard and Darius would execute her. Don't push at all, and she'd become complicit in a system designed to destroy people. She thought about Elena, about a healer who'd tried to change things and died screaming for it. About Ronan watching his father murder someone and learning that brutality was survival. And she realized something that changed everything. Ronan hadn't put her in these quarters as a threat. He'd put her here as a test. He wanted to see if she'd make the same mistakes Elena made, if she'd push the same boundaries, if she'd end up the same way, which meant Ronan was watching, evaluating, waiting to see what she'd do. The question was, did he want her to succeed or fail? Boshit. She got her answer 3 days later. Alora was in the courtyard gathering herbs from the small garden she'd started when she heard shouting from the training yards. Angry voices, the sound of a crowd gathering. She hurried toward the noise, found maybe 50 warriors circling 2 fighters in the center of the yard. One was a massive brute she'd seen before, veteran warrior, covered in scars. The other was younger, maybe 20, still fast but clearly outmatched, and the older warrior was beating him to death while everyone watched. Alora pushed through the crowd, Get close enough to see what was actually happening. The younger warrior was already on the ground, blood pouring from his nose and mouth. The veteran was kicking him methodically, ribs, stomach, head, each blow calculated to cause maximum damage. "Stop!" Alora shouted. "You're going to kill him!" Nobody reacted. Just kept watching like this was entertainment. I said, "Stop!" The veteran paused, looked at her like she was an insect that had spoken. "Who the hell are you?" "The healer. And I'm telling you to stop before you murder someone." The veteran smiled, showed teeth. "This is discipline, healer. Boys showed disrespect during drills. Disrespect requires correction." He kicked the younger warrior again, hard enough that she heard ribs crack. Alora moved without thinking, stepped directly between them, faced the veteran with her hands up. "That's enough. He's done." The veteran's expression went dark. "Move." "No." The crowd went silent, waiting, watching, probably already placing bets on how this ended. The veteran stepped forward, grabbed Alora's arm hard enough to bruise. "Move, or I'll move you." A voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Touch her again, and you'll lose that hand." Everyone turned. Ronan stood at the edge of the yard. He'd appeared without sound, without warning, just materialized like violence given form. The veteran released Alora immediately, dropped to one knee. "My king, I was just disciplining a warrior past the point of usefulness," Ronan finished, voice cold. "Causing permanent damage to a soldier I need functional. Wasting my resources because your pride got hurt." He moved closer, each step deliberate. "Is that an accurate summary?" The veteran's jaw tightened. The boy disrespected. "I don't care," Ronan said flatly. "Your job is to train warriors, not cripple them." His eyes swept the crowd. "All of you. Training exercises that end with soldiers too damaged to fight are not discipline. They're waste. And I don't tolerate waste." He looked at the injured warrior on the ground. "Get him to the healer. Now." Two soldiers moved to obey, started dragging the bleeding warrior toward Alora's quarters. Ronan's attention shifted to Alora. "You have something to say. I see it on your face." "Say it." Alora met his eyes. Knew this was dangerous. Knew contradicting the Wolf King in front of his warriors could get her killed. Said it anyway. This wasn't discipline. This was cruelty for its own sake. And if you let it continue, you're not building strong warriors. You're creating damaged people who'll eventually break under pressure because nobody taught them the difference between endurance and destruction. The silence that followed felt like physical weight. Ronan stared at her, expression unreadable. The crowd held its collective breath, waiting for execution. Instead, Ronan nodded once. "Follow me." "Now." He walked away. Alora had no choice but to follow. They walked in silence through corridors that twisted like a maze. Warriors they passed immediately dropped to their knees. Nobody spoke. Nobody even breathed too loud. Ronan's presence was absolute authority made flesh. Finally, he led her through a door into what looked like his private study. Books lining shelves, maps covering tables, weapons mounted on walls. The organized chaos of someone who ran an empire and needed to see every piece of it simultaneously. He closed the door, locked it, turned to face her. "You just contradicted me in front of 50 warriors," he said, voice quiet, dangerous. "Do you understand what that means?" "Yes. It means I'm probably about to die." Something flickered across Ronan's expression. Might have been amusement. "Then why do it?" "Because watching someone get beaten to death and saying nothing makes me complicit," Alora said. "I'd rather die honest than live as a coward." Ronan studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed, short, bitter, exhausted. "Elena said almost exactly that 6 weeks before my father killed her." He moved to the window, stared out at his fortress. "I was 15. Watched the whole thing. She pushed him too hard about changing training methods. He lost control. By the time we pulled him off her body, there wasn't enough left to identify." His voice was completely flat, like he was reciting grocery lists instead of describing murder. "I learned something important that day," he continued. "Healers who try to change Blackridge die. Warriors who question tradition die. Anyone who suggests that fear isn't the only path to strength dies. Because this empire was built on brutality, and it survives through brutality, and any attempt to soften it creates weakness." He turned to face her. So tell me, Alora, why should I let you live when you're following Elena's exact path to execution? Alora forced herself to hold his gaze. Because Elena tried to change your father. I'm trying to change your warriors. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Your father was one man consumed by rage. Your warriors are hundreds of people who've been taught that suffering is sacred. One is unfixable. The other just needs better teaching. Ronan's eyes narrowed. You think I'm going to let you reshape Blackridge's entire culture? No, Alora said. I think you already know something is broken here. That's why you kept me alive instead of letting Darius kill me at the gates. That's why you put me in Elena's quarters. You wanted to see if I'd notice the same problem she did, if I'd say the same things. She stepped closer. You're testing me. Fine. Here's my answer. Blackridge's strength isn't its brutality. It's the fact that 300 warriors would die for you without question. But you're burning through them faster than you can replace them because your training breaks as many as it builds. That's not strength. That's waste. The silence stretched. Ronan's expression was unreadable. Finally, he spoke. You have 1 month. Prove your methods work without weakening my warriors. Prove you can heal them without making them soft. Do that, and maybe Blackridge changes. Fail, and I'll exile you before Darius decides to finish what he started. 1 month isn't enough. 1 month is generous, Ronan interrupted. Elena didn't last 6 weeks. You want to beat her record? Start now. He walked to the door, unlocked it, held it open. Alora didn't move immediately, just stood there processing what had just happened. The Wolf King had essentially given her permission to start a revolution. Limited permission, conditional permission, but permission nonetheless. Why? She asked quietly. Why risk it? Ronan's expression was unreadable. Maybe I'm curious. Maybe I'm tired. Or maybe I just want to see if you're as brave as you pretend to be. He gestured toward the hallway. 1 month, healer. Make it count. Alora walked out, headed back toward her quarters with her mind racing. 1 month to change an empire built on violence. 1 month to prove healing could create strength without brutality. 1 month before Darius decided she was too dangerous to keep alive. Behind her, she heard Ronan's voice one last time. Quiet. Almost too quiet to hear. Don't make me regret this. Date. Word spread fast. By evening, every warrior in Blackridge knew the healer had contradicted the Wolf King and lived. The fortress divided immediately into factions. Some saw her as dangerous, a threat to traditions that kept them strong. Others were curious, wondering if maybe she was right, if maybe there was a different way. And Darius? Darius was furious. He came to her quarters that night, didn't knock, just walked in and slammed the door hard enough to crack the frame. You're playing a dangerous game, he said, voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Alora didn't look up from the medical text she was reading. Your brother gave me permission. I don't care what my brother gave you, Darius snarled. You just undermined our entire system in front of the warriors, made them question whether suffering is necessary. Made them soft. I made them think. There's a difference. Darius crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed her jaw hard enough to hurt, forced her to meet his eyes. Listen very carefully. My brother might be willing to watch you destroy everything we've built. I'm not. You have 1 month to prove your methods work, but if I see even one warrior weakened by your softness, if I see even one soldier questioning their training because of you, I will kill you myself, permission or not. He released her, stepped back. His breathing was ragged, barely controlled. You think you're saving people, he continued, voice quieter now, more dangerous. You're not. You're condemning them. Because the moment Blackridge softens, the moment we show weakness, every kingdom on the frontier will come for us. And when they do, all those warriors you healed will die anyway. Screaming, begging, wondering why their healer told them mercy was strength. He walked to the door, paused. Elena believed the same lies you do. That kindness could coexist with power, that healing could replace fear. She died believing those lies right up until my father's hands closed around her throat. His eyes were empty. Don't follow her path, healer. You won't like where it ends. Then he was gone, leaving Alora alone with bruises forming on her jaw and the knowledge that she'd just started a civil war inside Blackridge's walls. And the worst part? Both brothers were right. Darius was right that softening Blackridge too quickly would make it vulnerable, that enemy kingdoms would see weakness and attack, that warriors needed to be hard enough to survive brutal combat. But Ronan was right too, that burning through warriors faster than you could replace them was suicide, that training built on trauma created damaged soldiers who eventually broke, that fear alone couldn't sustain an empire forever. The question wasn't who was right. It was whether Alora could find a middle path that neither brother had considered, a way to build strength without destroying humanity, to create warriors who were hard where it mattered, but still remembered how to be people. She had 1 month to figure it out. 1 month before Darius killed her, or Ronan exiled her, or the entire fortress tore itself apart. No pressure. Alora started with the children, not because they were easy, because they were the future. If she could reach them, could teach them a different way before Blackridge's brutality became permanent, maybe there was hope. She began holding evening sessions in the healers' quarters, taught them basic medical skills, how to clean wounds, set bones, recognize infection, practical knowledge that kept them alive. But more than that, she taught them to see pain differently. Pain isn't sacred, she told them one night. 20 kids crammed into her quarters, all of them listening with the intensity of people hearing forbidden knowledge. Pain is just information. Your body telling you something is wrong. You don't worship it. You learn from it and fix whatever caused it. One of the older boys, 13, built like he'd been fighting his entire life, raised his hand. But instructors say pain makes us strong. No, Alora said. Overcoming pain makes you strong. There's a difference. If I break your arm and you heal wrong, you're not stronger, you're just damaged. But if I teach you how to heal it properly, how to rebuild the muscle, how to make sure it doesn't break again, then you're stronger. The children absorbed this like water hitting drought-dry earth. Some looked skeptical. Most looked hungry, desperate for something different than the brutality they'd known their entire lives. Mira raised her hand, the girl whose palm had been cut during training. Can you teach us more? About healing? I can teach you everything I know, Alora said. If you're willing to learn. All 20 hands went up. That was when Alora realized she'd just started something that couldn't be stopped. These children would talk, would tell other children, would spread ideas that contradicted everything Blackridge had taught them. And eventually, someone would notice. Someone would tell Darius. And then the real war would begin. But by then, maybe enough people would believe differently. Maybe enough warriors would question the old ways. Maybe Blackridge would change not because its king demanded it, but because its people chose it. It was a long shot, probably impossible, definitely dangerous, but it was the only shot she had. But 2 weeks into her month, the first warrior came to her with a different kind of injury. His name was Marcus. Veteran, maybe 40, covered in scars that told stories of countless battles survived. He walked into her quarters late at night when nobody would see, closed the door carefully behind him. I need help, he said quietly. Alora gestured to the table. Show me. Marcus didn't move. It's not physical. She studied him carefully, saw exhaustion, saw pain that went deeper than wounds. Okay, talk to me. I can't sleep, Marcus said, voice barely above a whisper. Haven't slept properly in months. Every time I close my eyes, I see... He stopped, shook his head. Battle, bodies, things I've done, things done to me. I wake up screaming. Warriors in my barracks are starting to notice, starting to talk. How long has this been happening? Years. Gets worse after every campaign. But it's never been this bad before. Alora had seen this before. In warriors who'd survived too much violence for too long, who carried trauma their bodies couldn't contain anymore. Silver Pine's healers called it battle sickness. Most packs considered it shameful, proof of weakness. Blackridge probably considered it grounds for execution. You're not weak, Alora said carefully. Your mind is trying to process things your body can't forget. It's normal. Normal? Marcus laughed bitterly. There's nothing normal about waking up terrified of ghosts that don't exist. They exist, Alora said. They just live in your head instead of outside it. But that doesn't make them less real or less dangerous. Marcus stared at her. Can you fix it? I can teach you ways to manage it, ways to sleep without the nightmares taking over. But it requires work and honesty, and admitting that what you've experienced damaged you in ways that need healing. If I admit that, if anyone finds out, I'm dead. Warriors here don't get to be damaged. Then you keep suffering in silence until it destroys you, Alora said bluntly. Or you risk trusting me and maybe we fix it. Your choice. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he sat down. What do I do? They worked for hours. Alora taught him breathing techniques, ways to ground himself when the nightmares came, methods for processing trauma without letting it consume him. It wasn't a cure. Wasn't even close. But it was a start. When Marcus finally left, he looked lighter, not healed, just less alone with his pain. That matters, Alora thought. Sometimes being less alone is enough to keep surviving. She expected him to be the only one, expected other warriors would be too proud to admit they needed help with invisible wounds. She was wrong. Within days, 3 more veterans showed up. Same story, same exhaustion, same trauma eating them alive from the inside. They came at night, secretly, ashamed but desperate. Alora treated them all, taught them the same techniques, created something Blackridge had never allowed before. A space where warriors could admit that violence damaged them without being destroyed for it. Word spread quietly. More warriors came, some with nightmares, others with rage they couldn't control, a few with grief over friends lost in battle, all of them carrying wounds nobody could see but everyone felt. And slowly, carefully, Alora began building something dangerous. A community of warriors who understood that strength wasn't the absence of pain. It was the courage to admit pain existed and deal with it anyway. That realization, that simple shift in thinking, was more revolutionary than any battlefield victory, because Blackridge's power had always come from convincing people that admitting vulnerability meant death. But if warriors could be strong and vulnerable, if they could face trauma and keep fighting, then everything Darius believed became obsolete. Monkey mamas. The confrontation came 3 weeks into her month. Alora was treating a warrior's anxiety when Darius kicked her door open. He'd brought 5 soldiers with him, all of them armed, all of them looking at her like she was enemy combatant. Outside, Darius ordered the warrior, now. The warrior fled, left Alora alone facing 6 predators. Darius moved into the room slowly, studying everything. The medical supplies, the chairs she'd arranged for group discussions, the journal where warriors wrote down their fears as part of therapy. He picked up the journal, flipped through it. His expression darkened with every page. Battle sickness, he read aloud. Night terrors. Grief over lost comrades. Rage management. His eyes found hers. You're not healing warriors. You're teaching them to be weak. I'm teaching them to be human, Alora said. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Darius threw the journal at her. It hit her chest hard. In Blackridge, human equals weak, human equals dead. You think letting warriors cry about nightmares makes them strong? It makes them targets. It makes them hesitate in battle, wondering if the enemy has nightmares too. And that hesitation gets them killed. You're wrong. I'm the commander of every warrior in this fortress, Darius roared. I've trained them, led them, watched them die. I know what makes soldiers strong. And it's not talking about their feelings like children. His soldiers moved to surround her, boxing her in, hands on weapons. You have 1 week left of your month, Darius said, voice dropping to something cold. Lethal. 1 week to prove your methods work. So here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, training exercises. Full combat. I'm going to push the warriors you've been healing, push them hard. See if your therapy made them stronger or just gave them excuses to quit. That's not a fair test. Life isn't fair. Battle isn't fair. Enemies don't care if you've processed your trauma. They just kill you. His smile was vicious. Tomorrow we find out if you've been strengthening my warriors or destroying them. And if I find even one of them weakened by your softness, I'll execute them in front of everyone. Then I'll come for you. He walked toward the door, paused. My brother might believe in your mercy. I don't. Mercy gets people killed. Fear keeps them alive. Tomorrow, I prove it. Then he was gone, taking his soldiers and his threats with him, leaving Alora with 1 night to prepare warriors for a test designed to break them. and the sudden terrifying knowledge that she'd put targets on the backs of every person she'd tried to help. She didn't sleep that night, couldn't, just sat in her quarters staring at the journal Darius had thrown at her, reading the entries warriors had written, their fears, their trauma, their desperate hope that maybe someone finally understood. If those warriors failed tomorrow, they'd die, and it would be her fault. She'd given them permission to be vulnerable, taught them it was safe to admit pain, and now Darius was going to use that vulnerability to destroy them. Maybe he was right. Maybe mercy really did get people killed in a place like Blackridge. Maybe the only path to survival was becoming exactly the monster everyone expected. She was still thinking that when she heard a knock at the door. Quiet. Tentative. "Come in." Marcus entered, the veteran who'd first come to her about nightmares. Behind him came 6 others, all of them warriors she'd been treating, all of them looking grim. "We know what's happening tomorrow," Marcus said. "Word spreads fast. Darius is going to make an example of us." Alora stood. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to put you in danger." "Stop," Marcus interrupted. "We knew the risks. Came to you anyway because what you're offering is worth dying for. What I'm offering is going to get you killed." "Maybe," another warrior said, "guy named Thorn, built like a mountain. Or maybe it'll prove something more important than survival." "What's more important than survival?" "Living," Thorn said simply. "Actually living instead of just existing between battles. You taught us that. Taught us we can be strong without being broken. That strength includes admitting when we need help." The other warriors nodded. One woman, Kara, vicious fighter, soft voice, stepped forward. "Tomorrow, Darius is going to push us harder than we've ever been pushed. He's going to try to break us, prove your methods are worthless." She smiled. It was terrifying. Let him try. We're not the same warriors we were 3 weeks ago. We're better. "You don't understand," Alora said desperately. "Darius isn't testing you. He's executing you. He's already decided you're weak. Tomorrow is just theater to prove it. Then we'll prove him wrong," Marcus said, "or we'll die trying. Either way, we're not going back to pretending pain doesn't exist. We're not going back to hiding wounds until they kill us. You gave us permission to be human. We're keeping it, whatever the cost." The other warriors murmured agreement. All of them had the same look in their eyes. Not resignation, determination. Alora realized something then. She thought she was healing these warriors, teaching them her methods, giving them tools to survive. But they'd been teaching her something more important. That courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing to be vulnerable anyway, choosing to be honest anyway, choosing to be human in a place that demanded monstrosity. These warriors were braver than any soldier she'd ever met. Not because they could kill without feeling, but because they could feel and still choose to keep living. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for trusting me, for being brave enough to change." "Thank you for giving us permission," Marcus replied. "Tomorrow we show Blackridge what real strength looks like." The warriors left one by one, heading back to their barracks to prepare for whatever horrors Darius had planned, leaving Alora alone with the terrifying knowledge that tomorrow everything would change. Either her methods would prove stronger than Blackridge's brutality, or Darius would execute everyone she'd tried to help and prove that mercy really was just another word for death. She stood at the window watching darkness, preparing herself for war. And in the shadows beyond, she saw a figure watching her quarters, tall, broad, silver eyes catching torchlight. Ronan had been watching this entire time, waiting to see what she'd do. Whether she'd break under pressure, whether her methods would survive their first real test. Tomorrow, the Wolf King would get his answer. Tomorrow, they all would. Dawn came cold and brutal. Alora dressed carefully, braided her hair back, made herself look as composed as possible, even though her hands were shaking. She walked to the main training yard where warriors were already gathering, hundreds of them. Come to watch Darius prove that mercy was weakness. Come to see if the healer's methods could survive combat. Darius stood in the center of the yard. Beside him were the 8 warriors Alora had been treating. Marcus, Thorn, Kara, 5 others. All of them armed. All of them facing Darius's best fighters. 20 elite soldiers who'd been chosen specifically to break them. The odds were impossible. 8 against 20, and Darius would push until something broke. Ronan stood on a platform overlooking the yard, silent, watching. His expression was unreadable. Darius's voice carried across the entire space. These 8 warriors have been corrupted by soft thinking, by a healer who believes pain is weakness instead of strength. Today we test whether her methods create strong soldiers or dead ones. He gestured. His elite fighters moved into position. Begin, Darius ordered. What happened next rewrote every assumption Blackridge had ever made about strength. The 8 warriors Alora had treated didn't fight like traditional Blackridge soldiers. They didn't rely on rage or brutal force. They fought with precision, with awareness, with control born from understanding their own limits instead of ignoring them. Marcus moved like water, deflecting attacks instead of meeting them head-on, using his opponent's momentum against them. He'd told Alora about his nightmares, about fearing his own violence. Now he channeled that fear into focus instead of letting it consume him. Thorn fought with brutal efficiency, not wasting energy, not pushing past injury into stupidity. He recognized when to retreat, when to regroup, because Alora had taught him that knowing your limits wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Kara was terrifying, fast, precise, ruthless where it mattered, but she didn't lose herself in rage, didn't let anger control her, because she'd learned that emotions were information, not commands. The other 5 fought the same way. Smart, controlled, dangerous without being self-destructive. And slowly, impossibly, they started winning. Not dominating, not crushing their opponents, but holding their ground. Matching elite warriors move for move. Proving that strength built on self-awareness was just as deadly as strength built on brutality. More deadly, actually. Because they weren't burning out, weren't injuring themselves proving points. They conserved energy, worked together, covered each other's weaknesses. The crowd watching started murmuring, confused, impressed, scared. Darius's expression darkened with every passing minute. This wasn't supposed to happen. His warriors were supposed to crush these soft-thinking weaklings. Prove that mercy got you killed. Instead, Alora's warriors were proving something far more dangerous. That healing didn't make you weak, it made you smarter, more durable, better at surviving. 20 minutes into the fight, 2 of Darius's elite warriors were down, injured, out of commission. Marcus's team hadn't lost anyone. That was when Darius snapped. He couldn't let this continue, couldn't let everyone see that his methods might be wrong. He drew his sword, stepped into the fight himself, headed straight for Marcus. And that was when everything went truly wrong. Because Darius wasn't trying to test anymore. He was trying to kill. Trying to prove through murder what he couldn't prove through combat. Marcus saw him coming, raised his weapon, prepared to defend himself. But Darius was faster, better. Trained since childhood to be the perfect killer, he would have killed Marcus in seconds. Except someone else stepped between them. Ronan appeared in the center of the yard like he'd materialized from shadow itself, caught Darius's blade with his bare hand. Blood immediately welled between his fingers. The entire fortress went silent. The Wolf King stood between his brother and Marcus, silver eyes locked on Darius, expression absolutely calm. "That's enough," Ronan said quietly. Darius stared at him, breathing hard, rage barely contained. "They're weak. They've been corrupted by her softness." "They're winning," Ronan interrupted, "against your best fighters, using methods you said would destroy them." He released Darius's blade, let his own blood drip onto the training yard dirt. "You wanted to test the healer's warriors. They've passed. Accept it. I won't accept softness infecting Blackridge." "Then you don't accept reality," Ronan said. Voice like ice. "These warriors are stronger because they understand themselves, because they learn to fight smart instead of just hard. That makes them more valuable to me, not less." Darius's jaw clenched. "You're going to destroy everything we've built, everything Father taught us." "Father taught us that fear was the only path to power," Ronan said. And then he died choking on his own rage. Alone. Hated. Destroyed by the very brutality that made him strong. His eyes were hard. I'm not making his mistakes. Not anymore. He turned to face the assembled warriors. All of Blackridge watching. Waiting. "Change is coming," Ronan announced, voice carrying across the entire fortress. The healer's methods work. You've all seen it. Warriors who understand their pain fight better than warriors who hide it. Soldiers who know their limits last longer than soldiers who ignore them. Strength built on self-awareness is more valuable than strength built on brutality alone. He gestured to Marcus and the others. These warriors have proven it, and from this day forward, every soldier in Blackridge will have access to the healer's training, not as punishment, as improvement. The murmurs that followed were deafening. Some warriors looked relieved, others looked angry. Traditionalists who believed change meant weakness. Progressives who saw possibility. The fortress was fracturing. Right there. Right then. Dividing into those who wanted evolution and those who demanded tradition. And standing at the center of it all was Darius, staring at his brother like he was watching everything he believed in burn to ash. "You've made your choice," Darius said quietly. "Chosen her over everything Blackridge stands for, everything we've built together." "I've chosen survival," Ronan replied. "There's a difference." Darius's expression went blank. Empty. The flatness of someone who'd just had their entire worldview destroyed. Then he turned and walked away. Through the crowd, out of the training yard, into whatever darkness he was planning next. Because men like Darius didn't accept defeat. They just stopped pretending to play by rules. Ronan watched him go. Then his eyes found Alora's in the crowd. "We need to talk," he said. "Now." They walked to his study in silence. Warriors they passed whispered, stared. Everyone knew something fundamental had just shifted in Blackridge. Nobody was sure what it meant yet. Ronan closed the study door, locked it, turned to face her. "You just started a civil war," he said, voice quiet, exhausted. "I know. My brother is going to try to kill you. Maybe try to kill me. Definitely try to destroy everything you've built. I know that too." Ronan moved to the window, stared out at his fortress. "I gave you 1 month to prove your methods worked. You've done that. But proving something works is different than surviving what comes next." "What comes next?" He turned to face her. His silver eyes held something she hadn't seen before. Not control, not calculation. Just exhaustion mixed with something that might have been hope if you squinted hard enough. "War," Ronan said simply. "Between those who believe Blackridge's strength comes from brutality, and those beginning to believe it might come from something else. Between tradition and evolution. Between my brother's fear and your mercy." He stepped closer. "And you're going to be standing right in the middle when it happens." "I know," Alora said again, but this time her voice didn't shake, because she'd chosen this path, chosen to heal in a place that worshipped wounds, chosen to offer mercy in an empire built on fear, chosen to stand between two brothers who embodied opposing philosophies of power. And she'd keep choosing it, even knowing it might kill her, even knowing Darius was probably planning her execution right now, even knowing the entire frontier would tear itself apart before this ended, because some wars were worth fighting, some changes were worth dying for. And teaching people they could be strong without being broken? That was worth everything. The next 3 days felt like watching ice crack beneath your feet. You could hear it, feel it, know the collapse was coming, but you couldn't stop walking forward. Blackridge divided into camps so fast it made Alora's head spin. Warriors who'd witnessed the training yard confrontation split immediately into factions. Some followed Ronan's declaration that change was survival. Others saw it as betrayal of everything the fortress stood for. And caught between them were hundreds of soldiers trying to figure out which side would keep them alive longer. The tension was so thick you could taste it, like blood mixed with snow. Alora felt it every time she walked through corridors. Warriors staring at her with expressions ranging from gratitude to pure hatred. Some nodded respectfully, others spat at her feet. A few looked like they wanted to draw weapons but didn't quite dare. Not yet, because Ronan had made his position clear. The healer was under his protection, untouchable. Anyone who hurt her would answer to the Wolf King himself. That protection was the only thing keeping her alive, and everyone knew it, which meant if something happened to Ronan, Alora would be dead within hours. She tried not to think about that, tried to focus on her work. The warriors who came to her quarters kept coming, more every day. Some wanting physical healing, others needing help with trauma they'd carried for years. all of them looking at her like she represented something they'd never been allowed to want before. Hope. The dangerous, fragile kind that got people killed in places like Blackridge. Mira and the other children came every evening, learned healing techniques, asked questions about why suffering didn't have to be sacred, absorbed different ideas like they were starving for them. And every night, Alora went to sleep wondering when Darius would make his move, because he would. Men who believed power came only from brutality didn't just accept philosophical defeat, they escalated. The question wasn't if, it was when, and how bad it would be when it finally happened. She got her answer on the fourth night after the training yard confrontation. Alora was treating a warrior's knife wound when she heard shouting from outside. Not training yard noise. Something else. Panic mixed with rage, the sound crowds make when violence erupts unexpectedly. She ran to the window, looked down at the courtyard below. Chaos. Warriors fighting each other, not practice, real combat. Blades drawn, blood already spreading across stone. Two distinct groups clashing like waves hitting rocks. Traditionalists versus reformers. Darius's followers versus Ronan's. The civil war that had been brewing for days finally exploding into the open. Alora's heart stopped. This was her fault. She'd started this. Given people permission to question traditions that kept Blackridge stable. And now warriors who should have been brothers were killing each other over philosophy. She ran toward the door, had to stop this, had to do something before the entire fortress tore itself apart. Marcus appeared in her doorway before she reached it, blocked her path. His face was grim. "Don't go out there," he said. "This isn't safe. I have to stop this." "You can't stop this." Marcus grabbed her shoulders, forced her to focus. "This has been building for years. You just gave it a catalyst. But the rot was already there, the division, the question of whether Blackridge survives through fear or something else. That argument existed long before you arrived. Then let me help the injured." "That's what they're counting on," Marcus said, voice urgent. "Darius's people. They want you visible, want you treating warriors, because the moment you step into that courtyard, someone is going to try to kill you and make it look like accident. Collateral damage from the fighting." Alora stared at him. "You think Darius planned this?" "I think Darius has been planning something since the training yard. This might be it. Start a riot. Use the chaos to eliminate you. Blame your death on the violence you supposedly caused." His eyes were hard. "Stay inside. Lock the door. Don't trust anyone except warriors you've personally treated. And even then, be careful." "Where's Ronan?" "I don't know. Nobody's seen him since this morning, which is either very good or very bad." Marcus left to join the fighting. Alora locked the door behind him, pressed her back against it, tried to breathe through the panic building in her chest. This was spiraling, fast. Warriors killing each other, Ronan missing, Darius somewhere orchestrating whatever nightmare came next, and her trapped in quarters that suddenly felt less like sanctuary and more like cage. She moved to the window again, watched the battle below, tried to count casualties, lost track after 12 bodies hit the ground. That was when she saw him, Darius, standing on a platform overlooking the courtyard, watching the violence with an expression of cold satisfaction, like he was viewing art he'd commissioned specifically for this purpose. And beside him stood warriors she didn't recognize, 20 at least, all armed, all wearing expressions that suggested they were waiting for orders. Darius turned, looked directly at her window, met her eyes across the distance, smiled. Then he gestured to his warriors, pointed toward the east wing, toward her quarters. Alora's blood went cold. He was sending them for her, right now, using the riot as cover to execute her while Ronan was conveniently absent. She backed away from the window, mind racing. The door was locked, but that wouldn't stop 20 warriors with weapons. She had no combat training, no way to defend herself against soldiers who'd been killing since childhood. She was trapped, and Darius knew it. Footsteps in the corridor, heavy boots, multiple sets, coming fast. Alora looked around desperately for anything she could use as weapon, found a scalpel, laughable against swords but better than nothing. The door handle turned, locked. Someone kicked it, once, twice. Wood began to splinter. This was it. This was how she died. Murdered in the same room where Elena had been killed. History repeating with different players but same ending. The door exploded inward. Warriors poured in, 6 of them, weapons drawn, eyes flat, here to execute orders without question. The leader stepped forward, drew his sword, voice absolutely calm. The healer, Alora Veyne. You're accused of corrupting Blackridge traditions and causing civil unrest. Lord Darius has sentenced you to execution, effective immediately. Under whose authority? Alora asked, voice shaking but steady enough. Under the authority of someone who actually cares about Blackridge's survival. The warrior raised his blade. Any last words? Alora gripped the scalpel, knew it was useless, but refused to die without fighting. Just one. You're about to murder someone under the Wolf King's direct protection, which means you're not executing me. You're committing treason. The warrior hesitated, just for a second, long enough for doubt to crack his certainty. And that second of hesitation saved her life, because that was when the window shattered. Someone came through the glass like violence made flesh, landed between Alora and the warriors with a predator's grace. Silver eyes blazing, authority radiating off him like heat. Ronan, the Wolf King himself, covered in blood that probably wasn't his, looking like he'd fought through hell to get here. He didn't speak, just moved. Faster than Alora had ever seen anyone move, disarmed the leader in 2 strikes, put him on the ground with a blade at his throat. The other 5 warriors froze, torn between following orders and not wanting to die. Ronan's voice came out low, lethal, controlled rage barely leashed. I gave explicit orders that the healer was under my protection. Which word didn't you understand? Healer or protection? The warrior beneath his blade was bleeding from a dozen cuts. Gasping. We were following Lord Darius's commands. Darius doesn't give commands in my fortress, Ronan said. I do. And my command was clear. Anyone who touched her dies. He pressed the blade deeper. So explain to me why I shouldn't execute all 6 of you right now for treason. Silence, except for fighting still raging in the courtyard below. Ronan stood, kept his blade at the warrior's throat, turned his attention to the others. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of this room, find Darius. Tell him his attempted coup failed. Tell him I'm coming for him. And tell him when I find him, we're going to have a very long conversation about the difference between commanding warriors and committing treason. The warriors exchanged glances, clearly weighing options. Run and face Darius's wrath for failure, or fight and face Ronan's wrath immediately. They chose running, scrambled out the door, disappeared into corridors, leaving Alora alone with Ronan, both of them breathing hard, surrounded by shattered glass and the sounds of battle echoing from outside. Ronan sheathed his blade, turned to face her. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something she'd never seen before. Not control, not calculation, actual fear. Are you hurt? He asked. Alora shook her head, unable to speak. The adrenaline was crashing now, making her shake, making it hard to breathe. Ronan crossed the room, gripped her shoulders, forced her to focus. Look at me. Breathe. You're safe now. Safe? Alora finally found her voice. It came out brittle, broken. Your brother just sent warriors to execute me while a civil war rages outside. Nothing about this is safe. I know. Ronan's jaw tightened. I didn't expect him to move this fast. Didn't think he'd risk open rebellion. I was wrong. Where were you? Dealing with an assassination attempt. Ronan said it casually, like discussing weather. Darius sent fighters after me this morning, claimed they were escort, tried to kill me in the northern watchtower. I survived, barely. By the time I fought my way back here, he'd already started the riot. The pieces clicked into place. Darius hadn't just planned Alora's execution, he'd planned a complete coup. Kill Ronan, kill Alora, blame the chaos on reform movements, seize control while traditionalists demanded return to old ways. It was brilliant, brutal. Exactly what you'd expect from someone who believed power came only through domination, and it had almost worked. He's going to try again, Alora said quietly. This was just the opening move. I know. Ronan released her, moved to the shattered window, stared out at the violence below. Which is why we need to end this. Now. Before more warriors die fighting a war neither side can win. How? Ronan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held something that might have been regret. By doing what I should have done weeks ago. By making a choice I've been avoiding because I wanted to believe there was a middle path. His eyes found hers. There isn't. Blackridge either changes completely or stays the same. Half measures just create civil war. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm done trying to balance Darius's brutality with your mercy. Done pretending we can keep both philosophies alive in the same fortress. Ronan's expression hardened. Tonight, I choose. And I'm choosing survival over tradition, change over fear. He stepped closer. I'm choosing you. The words hung in air heavy with violence and broken glass. Alora stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said, trying to understand the weight behind those simple words. Because Ronan wasn't just choosing philosophical positions. He was choosing to alienate half his warriors, choosing to face his own brother as enemy, choosing to risk everything he'd built on the possibility that mercy could coexist with power. He was choosing her. And that choice would either save Blackridge or destroy it completely. Why? She asked. Why risk everything for this? For me? Because watching you work these past weeks reminded me of something I'd forgotten, Ronan said quietly. That strength isn't the absence of vulnerability. It's the courage to be vulnerable and keep fighting anyway. You walked into the most brutal kingdom on the frontier and refused to become brutal. Refused to let suffering define you. Refused to believe that power required monstrosity. His voice dropped. You reminded me that maybe I don't have to be the monster everyone expects. You're not a monster. Yes, I am. Ronan's smile was bitter. I've done things that would make Darius look merciful. Killed people who probably deserved better. Built an empire on fear because fear was all I knew. But watching you, seeing warriors actually heal instead of just survive, that showed me there might be another way. And if that way gets us both killed, then we die trying to build something better than what came before. Ronan moved toward the door. Come on, we're ending this tonight. Ending what? The Civil War. The division. The question of whether Blackridge survives through tradition or evolution. He looked back at her. I'm calling assembly, every warrior in the fortress, making them choose sides publicly, forcing the confrontation before Darius has time to regroup. That's insane. Half the fortress might choose him over you. Possibly. But at least then we'll know who our enemies are. And we can stop pretending neutrality is possible. He walked into the corridor. Alora followed. Because what else could she do? Ronan had just declared he was risking his throne for her ideas, for her methods, for the possibility that healing could replace brutality as foundation of power. The least she could do was stand beside him when everything fell apart. They walked through corridors filled with injured warriors, through courtyards where the fighting had finally stopped. Not because anyone won, because exhaustion forced temporary ceasefire. Bodies scattered everywhere, blood staining stone, the physical cost of philosophical war made visible. Ronan's presence silenced arguments immediately. Warriors stopped mid-conversation, dropped to their knees. Even the ones who'd been fighting against his reforms recognized authority when it walked past. They reached the main hall. Ronan's guards were already forcing both factions inside, hundreds of warriors cramming into the space. Traditionalists on one side, reformers on the other. The division literal and visible. And standing at the front of the traditionalist side, wearing an expression of cold triumph, was Darius. He saw Ronan, saw Alora beside him. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't look surprised, didn't look defeated. If anything, he looked satisfied, like pieces were moving exactly where he wanted them. That should have been Alora's first warning. Ronan climbed onto the platform, stood before his warriors, voice carrying across the entire hall. Tonight Blackridge nearly destroyed itself. Warriors killed brothers over philosophy, over the question of whether our strength comes from brutality or something else. He paused. Let that settle. I'm done watching this fortress tear itself apart. So here's what happens now. Every warrior chooses, publicly. You follow my leadership, you accept that change is coming, that healing isn't weakness, that mercy can coexist with power. Or you side with tradition, with my brother, with the belief that fear is the only path to survival. The hall erupted, warriors shouting, arguments starting. Darius just smiled. Ronan raised his hand. Silence fell immediately. But understand this. Whatever you choose, you commit. No switching sides later. No claiming neutrality. Tonight you decide what Blackridge becomes. And you live with that choice. He gestured to the traditionalist side. My brother believes I'm destroying everything we've built, believes mercy will make us weak, believes the healer has corrupted our strength. He turned to address Darius directly. So let's settle this. Here, now. Make your case. Explain to everyone why your way is better. Darius stepped forward. His expression was perfectly calm, perfectly controlled. And that should have been the second warning.
You want me to explain why tradition matters? Darius asked. Why fear keeps us strong? Fine. I'll do better than explain. I'll demonstrate. He clapped his hands once. The hall's side doors opened. Darius's warriors entered. They were dragging prisoners. 20 of them, all children, all students from Alora's evening healing sessions, including Mira. Alora's world stopped. Her heart seized. Her breath caught, because she understood immediately what this was, what Darius was doing.
Leverage, the most brutal kind. Darius's voice carried across shocked silence. These children have been corrupted by the healer's teachings, taught that pain is weakness, that suffering isn't sacred, that our traditions are wrong. He walked down the line of prisoners, studying each terrified face. If we allow this corruption to continue, if we let mercy infect our youngest warriors, Blackridge dies. Not today, not tomorrow, but slowly, inevitably. Because we'll raise a generation too soft to survive. He stopped in front of Mira, drew his blade, held it to her throat. So here's my demonstration, Darius said. Here's proof that mercy is weakness. If the healer's methods are truly strong, if compassion truly creates better warriors, then she should be able to save these children. Right now. In front of everyone. Alora couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just stared at Mira's terrified face, at the blade against her throat, at Darius's cold satisfaction. This was checkmate. Horrible. Perfect. Brutal. Because if Alora did nothing, 20 children died and she proved mercy was powerless. But if she tried to save them, if she begged or negotiated or showed any vulnerability, Darius would use it to prove that compassion made you weak, controllable, easy to manipulate. Either way, he won. Ronan's voice cut through her paralysis. Release them, now. No, Darius said simply. Not until she admits her methods are worthless. Not until she kneels before the entire fortress and begs me to spare them. He smiled. That's what mercy looks like, brother. It looks like the healer on her knees, powerless, proving that compassion is just another word for surrender. The silence in that hall was absolute. Hundreds of warriors watching, waiting, seeing which philosophy would break first. And Alora understood with perfect clarity that this was the moment, the choice that defined everything. She could kneel, could beg, could prove Darius right about mercy being weakness, save 20 children by destroying every principle she'd fought for, or she could stand, could refuse, could let children die rather than validate brutality. Prove that sometimes strength meant making impossible choices. Both options were nightmare. Both would destroy her. That was the genius of Darius's trap. He'd found the one scenario where there was no right answer, where any choice proved his point. She looked at Mira, saw tears streaming down the girl's face, saw terror, saw betrayal. Because Alora had promised these children that kindness existed, that mercy had power, that they didn't have to worship suffering, and now that promise was about to get them killed. Alora opened her mouth, prepared to do the only thing she could, the thing that would destroy her but might save lives. She started to kneel, and that was when Ronan grabbed her arm, stopped her. His voice was quiet but absolutely firm. Don't, I have to. You kneel, you prove him right. You prove that compassion makes you controllable, that mercy is just weakness wearing a different mask. Ronan's eyes were hard. 20 children die either way. He's not letting them live. This is theater. He's going to kill them regardless of what you do. The only question is whether you surrender your principles before he does it. You don't know that. No. Yes, I do. Ronan's voice was harsh, brutal truth delivered without softening, because I know my brother. And he's not here to negotiate. He's here to prove a point written in children's blood. The words hit like physical blows. Because Ronan was right. Alora could see it in Darius's eyes. The cold certainty, the satisfaction. He'd already decided these children were dead, was just using them to force her submission first. She'd been so focused on saving lives that she'd missed the bigger trap. Darius didn't want to kill children. He wanted to kill hope, wanted to prove that mercy couldn't protect anyone, that compassion was just pretty weakness that crumbled under pressure. And if she knelt, if she begged, she'd be proving it for him. Alora straightened, met Darius's eyes, voice shaking but clear. No. The word echoed. Darius's smile widened. No? You're refusing to save them? I'm refusing to pretend you're offering a real choice. You're going to kill them regardless of what I do. This whole performance is just you proving that brutality wins. That might makes right. That fear is the only real power. Finally, Darius said, the healer sees truth. Yes, these children die. Because that's what happens when people believe mercy has power, when they trust compassion to protect them, when they follow healers instead of warriors. He raised his blade higher. They die screaming, and everyone learns the lesson. Stop. The voice that cut through the hall wasn't Ronan's, wasn't Alora's. It came from the crowd of warriors. Marcus stepped forward. Then Thorn, then Kara, then dozens more. Warriors Alora had treated, had healed, had taught that strength included vulnerability. They formed a wall between Darius and the children, weapons drawn, expressions grim. Marcus spoke, voice steady. You want to kill them? You go through us first. Darius laughed. It echoed off stone. You're going to fight me? For children corrupted by soft thinking? We're going to fight you because those children are our future, Thorn said. Because protecting the vulnerable is what separates warriors from butchers. Because strength that can't defend innocence isn't strength. It's just violence pretending to have purpose. The traditionalist warriors shifted, uncertain. Some looked ready to support Darius, others looked uncomfortable. Because executing children was brutal even by Blackridge standards, even for people who believed fear was necessary. Darius's expression went flat. You're choosing her over tradition, over everything Blackridge stands for. We're choosing evolution over extinction, Kara said. Your way burns through warriors faster than we can replace them, creates soldiers so damaged they eventually break. The healer's way creates warriors who last, who heal, who remember why they're fighting instead of just fighting because it's all they know. Darius looked at his brother. This is what you've created. Warriors who value mercy over strength, soldiers who defend healers and children instead of conquest. You've destroyed Blackridge. No, Ronan said quietly. I've saved it. I just didn't realize it until now. He stepped down from the platform, walked toward his brother, stopped 5 feet away, close enough to see Darius clearly, to see the rage barely controlled beneath perfect composure. You want to know the truth? Ronan asked. Father was right about one thing. Fear is necessary, but he was wrong about everything else. Fear alone creates obedience, not loyalty, not strength that lasts, just obedience that crumbles the moment fear becomes impossible to maintain. His voice hardened. You're so busy being terrifying that you've forgotten to give warriors something worth protecting, worth dying for, worth living for. And you think the healer's mercy does that? Yes. Ronan's answer was simple, absolute. Because warriors who fight for something they love are stronger than warriors who fight because they're afraid not to. His eyes locked onto Darius's. You taught them to fear. I'm teaching them to care. Guess which creates more durable soldiers? Caring gets you killed, Darius said. Gets you weak. Gets you standing in front of children about to be executed while pretending you have power. His blade pressed harder against Mira's throat. Blood welled. Prove me wrong, brother. Stop me. Ronan moved, faster than thought, faster than Darius expected, disarmed him in one perfect strike, caught Mira before she fell, handed her to Marcus, then turned back to face his brother, who stood there, empty-handed, surrounded by warriors who'd chosen sides, realizing too late that he'd miscalculated. That brutality alone couldn't win against loyalty built on something deeper than fear. It's over, Ronan said quietly. No more executions. No more using children as leverage. No more pretending that cruelty is the only path to strength. Darius's expression went blank. The flatness that came before violence. You think this is over? You think defeating me in one confrontation changes anything? His voice dropped. Lethal. Promising. This is just beginning, brother. You've chosen weakness, and weakness always loses eventually. Then he moved. Not toward Ronan, toward Alora. Because even disarmed, he was dangerous. Even surrounded, he was lethal. And he decided that if he couldn't win the argument, he'd remove the catalyst. He'd kill the healer and let Blackridge's tradition survive on her corpse. Ronan intercepted, caught Darius mid-lunge. The brothers collided, went down fighting. No weapons, just raw violence. Years of training, decades of competition. A lifetime of opposing philosophies made flesh and crashing together like forces of nature. The fight was brutal, precise. Each brother knowing exactly how the other moved, where their weaknesses lived, how to exploit every opening. They destroyed furniture, cracked stone, drew blood from a dozen wounds neither seemed to notice, fought with the intensity of people who'd been heading toward this moment their entire lives. Finally, Ronan got Darius in a hold that ended it. Arm around his brother's throat, pressure that could kill if applied fully, just had to squeeze. The hall went silent, watching, waiting, because everyone understood what this moment meant. If Ronan killed Darius, tradition died with him. But if he showed mercy, if he let his brother live, he risked everything he'd just fought for. There was no right answer, just terrible choices. Ronan's voice came out ragged, exhausted. I could kill you, should kill you. You've committed treason, attempted murder, started a civil war. Any of those deserves execution. Then do it, Darius gasped. Prove you're still Wolf King, still capable of making hard choices. Ronan's arm tightened. For a long moment, it looked like he would, like he'd choose survival over mercy, brutality over forgiveness. Then he released Darius, shoved him away, stood, addressed the entire hall. My brother is exiled, effective immediately. He has until dawn to leave Blackridge. If he's found within our territory after sunrise, he dies. No trial, no negotiation, just execution. Ronan's voice was absolute. This is mercy. Not weakness. Mercy. Because killing him would be easier, faster, but it would also prove his philosophy right. That might makes right. That power requires monstrosity. His eyes swept the crowd. I refused to prove him right. Darius stood, wiped blood from his mouth, stared at his brother with expression that was equal parts rage and something that might have been respect. You'll regret this, he said quietly. Exile just delays the inevitable. I'll return. And when I do, I'll bring every traditionalist kingdom on the frontier with me. They'll hear that Blackridge has become soft, that the Wolf King chose a healer over his own blood, that mercy infected the strongest fortress and made it vulnerable. He smiled. They'll come. And when they do, your compassion will get everyone here killed. Maybe, Ronan said. Or maybe we'll prove that strength built on loyalty is more powerful than strength built on fear. Guess we'll find out. Darius turned to leave, paused beside Alora, leaned close enough only she could hear. You won today. Congratulations. His voice was cold, empty. But victories built on mercy don't last. Eventually, reality catches up. Eventually, the wolves at the gates don't care about your philosophy. They just kill you. And when that happens, when you're dying because you convinced the Wolf King to be weak, remember this moment. Remember that I warned you. Then he was gone, walking out of the hall, out of the fortress, into exile, taking with him about 30 warriors who still believed tradition mattered more than evolution, who saw Ronan's mercy as weakness, who'd rather follow Darius into uncertainty than stay in a Blackridge that valued healing. The hall emptied slowly, warriors returning to barracks, to duties, to whatever came next, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. The Wolf King choosing compassion over execution, choosing his healer over his brother, choosing evolution over tradition. Some looked relieved, others looked terrified. Nobody looked certain anymore, because everything Blackridge had believed just got upended in one violent night. Alora stood in the empty hall, surrounded by blood and broken furniture, and the 20 children she'd somehow helped save. Mira clung to her, shaking, traumatized, alive but forever changed by coming that close to execution. Ronan approached. His clothes were torn, his face was bruised, his knuckles were split. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in one night. We need to talk, he said quietly. Now? Now, before I change my mind about what I just did. His eyes held something she'd never seen before. Not control, not certainty, just exhaustion mixed with doubt and the terrible fear that he'd made the wrong choice. They walked to his study. Alone this time. No guards, no witnesses. Just two people who'd started a revolution and had no idea whether it would save anything or destroy everything. Ronan poured 2 drinks, handed her one, drank his own in a single swallow, poured another. "I just exiled my brother," he said, voice flat. "Took 30 warriors with him, men I've fought beside for years, good soldiers, loyal, gone because I chose your methods over his." "You chose survival," Alora said.
"Did I?" Ronan's laugh was bitter. "Or did I just choose to feel better about myself while condemning Blackridge to death?" Because Darius is right about one thing. The frontier kingdoms will see this as weakness. They'll come. And when they do, we'll find out whether mercy can actually defend an empire or if I just destroyed everything my father built. You didn't destroy anything. You saved it. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. Ronan turned to face her. His expression was raw, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "I just risked my entire kingdom on the theory that healing creates strength. On your philosophy. On the belief that there's a middle path between brutality and softness. And if I'm wrong, if Darius is right that mercy gets everyone killed, that's on me. It's on both of us," Alora said. "I started this, pushed for change, convinced you that another way was possible."
"Yes, you did." Ronan stepped closer. "And either you just saved Blackridge, or you destroyed it. We'll know which when the frontier armies arrive." The words hung between them, heavy with truth. Because that was the terrifying reality. They'd chosen evolution over tradition, mercy over fear, healing over brutality, and now they'd live or die by that choice. The frontier kingdoms were coming. Darius would make sure of it, would spread word that Blackridge had become weak, that the Wolf King chose a healer over strength, that mercy had infected the strongest fortress and made it vulnerable. And when those kingdoms arrived with armies ready to exploit perceived weakness, Alora and Ronan would find out whether compassion could coexist with power, whether healing could defend an empire, whether mercy was actually strength or just pretty weakness that got everyone killed. The frontier armies arrived 6 weeks after Darius's exile. Not all at once. That would have been too obvious, too easy to defend against. Instead, they came in waves, small scouting parties first, testing Blackridge's borders, probing for weakness, seeing if the rumors were true. If the Wolf King really had gone soft, if mercy really had infected the strongest fortress and made it vulnerable. Alora watched from the battlements as reports came in. 3 kingdoms had mobilized: Iron Peak from the north, Bloodstone from the east, Ashenhowl from the west, all of them predators who'd been waiting years for Blackridge to show weakness. All of them led by alphas who believed power came only through domination, and leading them as advisor, as the voice whispering in their ears about opportunity, was Darius himself. He'd done exactly what he promised, gone to every traditionalist kingdom on the frontier, told them Blackridge had become weak, that the Wolf King chose a healer over his own brother, that compassion had replaced fear as foundation of power, that now was the time to strike before the infection spread, and they'd listened. Because predators always recognize wounded prey. The question wasn't whether they'd attack, it was when, and how Blackridge would survive fighting 3 kingdoms simultaneously while half its own warriors still questioned whether mercy could defend an empire. Ronan stood beside her on the battlements, silent, studying the landscape like he could see the coming war written in snow and stone. His expression was unreadable, but she could feel the tension radiating off him, the weight of knowing he'd gambled everything on philosophy and now reality was coming to collect. "How many?" Alora asked quietly. "Combined?" Ronan's voice was flat. "Maybe 1,500 warriors, battle-hardened, experienced, led by kings who've been conquering smaller packs for decades." He paused. "We have 400, and that's counting everyone, including the ones who still think I'm wrong for exiling Darius." But the math was brutal, simple, terrifying. They were outnumbered almost 4 to 1, fighting on multiple fronts, with divided loyalty, against enemies who wanted to prove that brutality defeated mercy. That fear was stronger than hope. "We're going to lose," Alora said. "Not a question, just acknowledgement of reality. Probably." Ronan's answer was honest. harsh. We're outmanned, surrounded, fighting a war on ideology as much as territory. His jaw tightened. But we're going to make them pay for every inch, make them regret thinking Blackridge went soft. Show them that warriors who fight for something they love are more dangerous than warriors who fight because they're afraid not to. How? By doing what you taught me. Ronan turned to face her. His silver eyes held something she'd never seen before. Not control, not calculation, just absolute certainty mixed with the kind of desperate courage that came from having nothing left to lose. We stop fighting like Blackridge always fought. Stop trying to be more brutal than everyone else. Start fighting like we actually have something worth protecting. I don't understand. You will. Ronan moved toward the stairs, called orders as he walked. Assemble everyone. Warriors, healers, children, everyone who can stand. Main courtyard. Now. Within the hour, the entire fortress had gathered. 400 warriors, 50 healers, another 100 support staff, and older children, all of them looking at their king, waiting for orders, waiting to be told how they'd survive the impossible. Ronan stood on the platform overlooking them, voice carrying across the courtyard. In 3 days, maybe 1,500 enemy warriors will reach our gates. They're coming because they believe we're weak, because they think mercy makes us vulnerable, because a healer convinced me that strength could exist without brutality, and they want to prove her wrong by killing everyone here. Silence. Absolute. Terrified. They're right about one thing, Ronan continued. We did change. We stopped worshiping pain, stopped pretending suffering was sacred, started believing warriors could heal without becoming soft. His eyes swept the crowd. But they're wrong about what that change created. Dead wrong. And in 3 days, we're going to prove it. He gestured to Alora. Join me. She climbed onto the platform, stood beside him, facing hundreds of people who'd either accepted her methods or still questioned them. All of them now dependent on those methods being strong enough to survive war. The healer taught us something Blackridge forgot, Ronan said. That warriors who understand their pain fight smarter than warriors who hide it. That soldiers who know their limits last longer than soldiers who ignore them. That strength built on self-awareness is more durable than strength built on fear alone. His voice hardened. For weeks you've been learning her methods. Some of you believed. Others did it because I ordered it. Now we find out whether it was worth it. He turned to address the warriors directly. Here's what's going to happen. We're not meeting them in open battle. We're not trying to match their numbers with brutality. We're fighting smart, using terrain, using knowledge, using the fact that we're defending something we actually care about while they're attacking because someone told them it would be easy. Marcus stepped forward from the crowd. How do we fight 1,500 with 400? By making them fight our war instead of theirs, Ronan said, by using every advantage we have, by remembering that defensive combat is different than conquest. They have to take territory. We just have to hold it. His smile was cold, and we're very good at holding things. He spent the next hour laying out strategy. Not the brutal frontal assault Blackridge traditionally used. Something else. Something that required precision, coordination. Warriors working together instead of competing to be most vicious. It was brilliant, terrifying, built entirely on the idea that soldiers who trusted each other fought better than soldiers who only feared their commander. And it was their only chance. The meeting ended. Warriors dispersed to prepare. Alora started to leave, but Ronan caught her arm, held her back until everyone else had gone. I need you to do something, he said quietly. Something that might save lives, but will definitely put you in danger. What? The injured are going to pile up fast once fighting starts, faster than healers can handle from inside the fortress. Ronan's expression was grim. I need you out there, on the battlefield, moving between positions, treating warriors where they fall so they can keep fighting. That's suicide. I'll be exposed.
Yes, which is why I'm asking instead of ordering. Ronan's voice was rough. This is dangerous, probably fatal, but it's also the only way we survive. Warriors who know they'll be healed fight differently than warriors who expect to die from first wound. They take smart risks instead of suicidal ones. They hold positions longer because they trust support will come. You're asking me to be human shield-wearing healers' colors. I'm asking you to be the thing that keeps my warriors believing victory is possible. Ronan stepped closer. You changed Blackridge by giving people permission to be vulnerable.
Now I'm asking you to prove that vulnerability doesn't mean helpless, that healers can be just as crucial in battle as fighters. The weight of that request settled over her like armor made of responsibility. He was right. Warriors who knew healing was available fought differently, smarter, more willing to hold impossible positions because they trusted someone would come, more likely to survive injuries that would normally be fatal because treatment came fast. But it also meant Alora would be the most visible target on the battlefield. Every enemy warrior would see healer colors, and no killing her would shatter Blackridge's morale faster than any tactical victory. She'd be priority target, walking symbol of everything the frontier kingdoms wanted to destroy. And Ronan was asking her to do it anyway, because it was the only strategy that might work. Alora met his eyes, saw exhaustion, saw desperation, saw a king who'd gambled his empire on philosophy and now needed her to risk everything to prove that gamble might actually pay off. "I'll do it," she said. "On one condition. Name it. You stop pretending you're fine." Alora's voice was firm. "Stop carrying this alone. Stop acting like you don't need the same healing you're asking warriors to accept. Whatever darkness you've been suppressing since your father died, whatever beast you think will consume you if you lose control. We deal with it, together. Before battle starts and stress breaks whatever control you're maintaining." Ronan's expression went carefully blank. "That's not relevant, so it's completely relevant. If you break during combat, if the beast takes over, we lose everything. Not because you'll be weak, because you'll be destructive without direction." She stepped closer. "You taught me that strength includes knowing your limits. Time to practice what you're preaching." The silence stretched. Ronan staring at her like she'd just demanded he strip naked in front of the entire fortress. Finally, he spoke. Voice barely above whisper. "You don't understand what you're asking. What's inside me isn't just anger or trauma. It's something worse. Something I've spent years keeping chained because the alternative is becoming my father. Becoming the monster who killed Elena, who destroyed everything he touched." "Then we'll make sure that doesn't happen," Alora said simply. "But we do it before battle, not during. Because I'm not watching you tear yourself apart trying to be two different people." "How?" "The same way I've helped every other warrior, by facing it instead of hiding from it, by accepting that having darkness inside you doesn't mean you are darkness." She held his gaze. "Trust me, the way you're asking me to trust you on that battlefield." Ronan was silent for a long moment, then nodded once. "Tonight, after preparations are finished, my quarters." Alora agreed. Walked away feeling like she'd just committed to something far more dangerous than battlefield healing. Because helping warriors process trauma was one thing. Helping the Wolf King confront whatever monster lived inside him was something else entirely. Something that might save them all or destroy everything before the enemy even arrived. Preparations consumed the next 2 days. Warriors training in new formations. Healers organizing mobile medical stations. Civilians fortifying walls. Children being taught escape routes in case the fortress fell. Everyone working together. Not because they feared punishment, because they understood what was at stake. Because they'd chosen to believe that defending something you loved was stronger than destroying things you feared. It was beautiful, terrifying, fragile as ice over deep water. Alora worked constantly, teaching healers battlefield medicine, showing them how to treat injuries fast enough to get warriors back into combat. Preparing supplies that could be carried into active fighting, making sure every healer understood that they'd be targets, that enemy warriors would see them as priority kills. Some were terrified. Most were determined. All of them understood this was the test. The moment that proved whether mercy could coexist with power or was just pretty idealism that got everyone killed. On the second night, after preparations had finished, Alora went to Ronan's quarters as promised. Found him standing at the window, staring out at the fortress, at the warriors preparing to die defending his choices. He didn't turn when she entered, just spoke to the glass. "You sure you want to do this? Once we start, there's no stopping. No pretending you didn't see what I really am, I'm sure." Ronan finally turned. His expression was raw, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "My father didn't die from battle wounds. He died because the beast inside him consumed what was left of his humanity. He lost control during a rage, started killing anyone close. Guards, servants. Elena, when she tried to calm him. We had to put him down like a rabid animal." His voice was flat,
I was there. I helped. And every day since I've been terrified, I'll end up exactly the same way. You won't. You don't know that. Ronan's laugh was bitter. I feel it sometimes, especially when stressed. This thing inside me that wants to destroy everything, that finds joy in violence, that would happily tear Blackridge apart if I let it. I've spent years suppressing it, controlling it, pretending it doesn't exist, because the alternative is becoming him. Suppression isn't control, Alora said quietly. It's just delayed explosion. You can't heal what you won't acknowledge exists. Then what do? You stop treating it like enemy. Stop pretending you're two separate beings. The beast isn't something foreign. It's part of you. The part that's been shaped by violence and trauma and years of pretending strength means never feeling. She moved closer. You don't destroy it. You integrate it. Make peace with the fact that you contain both light and darkness, both compassion and violence. And neither one defines you. Both together make you whole.
That sounds like healer philosophy that doesn't work in reality. It's worked for every warrior I've treated. Worked for Marcus, who thought his nightmares meant he was weak. Worked for Thorn, who believed his rage made him monstrous. Worked for Kara, who thought admitting fear meant surrender. Alora's voice was firm. It'll work for you too, if you're brave enough to try. Ronan stared at her for a long moment, then sat heavily. Like exhaustion he'd been carrying for years finally became too much to hold standing. Tell me what to do. They worked for hours, Alora guiding him through techniques she'd used with other warriors, breathing exercises to manage stress, mental frameworks for processing rage without letting it consume him, ways to acknowledge the violent instincts without acting on them reflexively. But more than technique, she taught him acceptance, that having monstrous impulses didn't make him a monster, that feeling rage was different than becoming rage, that the beast inside him was just accumulated trauma trying to protect him in the only way it knew how. By the time dawn light filtered through windows, something had shifted. Ronan looked different, not softer, not weaker, just more complete, like he'd spent years fighting himself and finally called truce.
How do you feel? Alora asked.
Exhausted, terrified, like I just broke something I'd been holding together through pure force of will.
Ronan met her eyes, but also lighter, less like I'm about to explode, less like every day is battle against myself. That's progress.
We'll see. Ronan stood, moved to the window again. Real test comes when battle starts and stress makes everything harder. When warriors are dying and I have to make impossible choices and the beast wants to solve everything through violence. His jaw tightened. Then we find out if integration actually works or if I just convince myself I'm not my father. You're not your father. Prove it to me when fighting starts, Ronan said. When I'm covered in blood and rage is screaming to take over and you're somewhere on that battlefield exposed and vulnerable. Prove it to me when every instinct I have wants to destroy everything threatening you. His voice dropped. Because that's when I'll need this the most. When protecting you makes me want to become the monster everyone's always feared. The words hung between them, heavy with truth and fear and something else. Something neither of them had time to examine because enemy armies were maybe 12 hours away and everything was about to explode. Alora left his quarters as sun rose, walked back to her own rooms, tried to prepare mentally for what came next. Battlefield healing while surrounded by warriors trying to kill her, while proving that mercy could defend an empire, while Ronan fought both external enemies and internal demons simultaneously. No pressure. The frontier armies reached Blackridge's borders at noon. 1,500 warriors spreading across 3 fronts like infection. Iron Peak from the north, Bloodstone from east, Ashenhowl from west. All of them moving in coordinated assault designed to overwhelm defenders through sheer numbers. And standing with Iron Peak's forces wearing an expression of cold satisfaction was Darius. He'd returned exactly as promised. With armies. With allies. With proof that mercy made you vulnerable and brutality was the only path to survival. Alora watched from the battlements as enemy forces positioned themselves. Saw Darius studying the fortress. Saw him gesture to various weak points. Share intelligence he'd gained from growing up inside these walls. He was helping them. Actively working to destroy the kingdom he'd helped build. Because his brother chose evolution over tradition. Because a healer convinced the Wolf King that compassion could coexist with power. And now 1,500 warriors were here to prove that wrong by killing everyone inside Blackridge. Ronan appeared beside her, silent, studying enemy positions with tactical precision. His expression was calm, but she could feel the tension radiating off him, the wolf inside recognizing threat, preparing for violence. "They're not attacking immediately," he said quietly. "They're waiting, giving us time to see how outnumbered we are, how hopeless this is, trying to break morale before first blow lands. Is it working?"
On some. Ronan's jaw tightened. About 30 warriors deserted last night, decided defending Mercy wasn't worth dying for. Can't blame them. The math is brutal. His eyes found hers. But the ones who stayed, they're here because they chose to be, because they believe what you taught them, that strength includes vulnerability, that fighting for something you love is more powerful than fighting because you're afraid. Let's hope they're right. We'll know soon. Ronan gestured to the battlefield. Darius won't wait long. He'll want to strike before we can prepare more, before we can second guess. He paused. When fighting starts, you stay close to Marcus and his squad. They'll protect you while you work. Don't try to be hero. Don't expose yourself unnecessarily. Just heal warriors who can still fight and move on. What about you? I'll be everywhere. Commanding, fighting, keeping this organized enough that we don't collapse immediately. His voice hardened. And trying very hard not to let the beast take over when I see you in danger. You'll manage. Will I? Ronan's expression was unreadable, because every instinct I have says protecting you means destroying everything threatening you. And when fighting starts, when I see enemy warriors near you, that instinct is going to scream. His eyes locked onto hers. You asked me to integrate the darkness, accept it. Now I'm trying, but I can't promise it won't break loose when you're the one at risk. Then I'll trust you to control it, Alora said. Same way you're trusting me to survive out there. Ronan nodded once, started to turn away, paused. If we don't survive this, if they overrun us, I want you to know something. You were right. About everything. Mercy isn't weakness. Healing isn't softness. Compassion doesn't make warriors vulnerable. His voice was rough. You changed Blackridge for the better. Even if we die proving it, we're not dying today. Probably are. But it's nice that you're optimistic. Ronan almost smiled. Then he was gone. Moving to command positions, preparing for war, leaving Alora alone on the battlements, watching 1,500 warriors prepare to kill everyone she'd tried to help. The attack came an hour later, not subtle, not strategic, just brutal coordinated assault from 3 directions simultaneously, Iron Peak from north, Bloodstone from east, Ashen Howl from west, all of them hitting at once, trying to overwhelm through numbers, through fear, through proving that Mercy couldn't defend against determined brutality. Blackridge's warriors met them at prepared positions, not in open combat, not trying to match numbers, fighting smart, using terrain, using defensive advantages, using the fact that they were protecting home instead of conquering territory. And it worked. At first. Enemy forces hit prepared defenses and stalled, couldn't advance without taking massive casualties, couldn't retreat without admitting the assault had failed. So they pushed harder, threw more warriors at positions, accepted brutal losses because they had numbers to spare, and Blackridge didn't. That was when the real war started, when tactics gave way to grinding attrition, when both sides just fought because stopping meant dying. Alora moved through the chaos wearing healer colors, Marcus and his squad surrounding her, protecting her while she worked. She treated injuries where warriors fell, fast, brutal medicine that got soldiers back into combat, stopped bleeding, set bones, gave them chance to survive until proper care could come later. And warriors fought differently because of it, took calculated risks knowing healing was available, held impossible positions because they trusted support would come, fought like people who believed survival was possible instead of people who'd accepted death. It made difference. Small at first, then larger. Blackridge's defenders lasting longer than they should, fighting smarter than expected, proving that warriors who had something to lose fought harder than warriors with nothing to protect. But the enemy kept coming, wave after wave, replacing losses faster than Blackridge could, grinding defenders down through sheer numbers. Alora lost track of time, lost track of injuries treated, just kept working, moving position to position,
healing warriors so they could keep fighting, watching people she'd trained die despite her best efforts, watching the fortress she'd tried to change get overwhelmed by enemies who wanted to prove change was weakness. She was treating a warrior's chest wound when she heard the sound. Different from normal battle noise, deeper, more primal, the sound predators make when they stop playing. She looked up, saw movement on the northern front, saw Iron Peak's forces parting, making way for someone. Darius walked through the gap, alone, moving toward Blackridge's northern position with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how this ended. He stopped 50 feet from the walls, raised his voice. "Ronan, I know you can hear me. Let's end this. You and me. Single combat. Winner takes everything. Loser's forces withdraw." The battlefield went quiet, both sides stopping to watch. Ronan appeared on the northern battlements, studied his brother. "You want single combat? Now? While we're losing?" "You're not just losing. You're being destroyed." Darius's voice carried across the silence. 3 more hours and we'll have breached every position, killed every defender, taken Blackridge and executed the healer who corrupted it. His smile was cold. "Or you fight me. Prove your strength. If you win, we withdraw. If I win, your warriors surrender and we rebuild Blackridge properly, without mercy, without softness, the way it should be." It was trap. Obviously trap. Darius wouldn't offer fair terms unless he believed he'd win, unless he'd planned something that gave him advantage. But it was also Blackridge's only chance, because 3 more hours of grinding combat would end in massacre, would prove Darius right about mercy making them vulnerable. Ronan's voice cut through Alora's thoughts. "I accept. Single combat. No weapons. No armor. No interference." He climbed down from the battlements, walked toward his brother. Winner takes everything. The armies pulled back, creating space, making arena from battlefield, hundreds of warriors watching, waiting, betting everything on which brother proved stronger. Alora pushed through the crowd, reached Ronan before he entered the circle, grabbed his arm. "This is trap. He's planned something." "I know." Ronan's voice was calm. "But it's also only option. We can't win through attrition. This way at least gives us chance. If you lose, I won't. Not because I'm stronger, because I have something he doesn't." His eyes found hers, something worth fighting for beyond just proving philosophy. Someone who taught me that strength includes accepting darkness instead of being consumed by it. He walked into the circle, faced his brother across 20 feet of blood-stained ground. Darius smiled. "No beast this time? No letting rage take over? You're really trying to win through control?" "Control is strength," Ronan said. "Control is cage," Darius countered. Father knew that, embraced it, became unstoppable because he stopped pretending humanity mattered. His expression went flat. "Let me show you what you gave up when you chose mercy." He moved, faster than should be possible, hit Ronan with force that sent him sprawling, followed with strikes designed to kill. But Ronan rolled, dodged, countered with precision, fighting smart instead of brutal, using technique instead of rage, proving that control could match violence. They fought like forces of nature, like opposing philosophies made flesh. Every strike was statement, every block was argument. The entire war distilled into 2 brothers fighting over whether mercy could coexist with power. And slowly, Ronan started winning. Not through brutality, through technique, through fighting like someone who'd integrated his darkness instead of being consumed by it. Darius realized it too late. Realized Ronan had actually changed, had actually learned to be strong without being monster. And that realization broke something inside him. He reached into his belt, drew hidden blade, the trap he'd planned all along, broke his own rules of engagement and lunged, going for kill strike, proving through action that honor meant nothing, that betrayal was just strategy, that might made right. Ronan caught his wrist, twisted, disarmed him, put him on the ground with blade at his throat for second time in weeks. The battlefield went silent, watching, waiting. Ronan could kill him, should kill. Darius had broken terms, had tried to murder him through deception, had brought armies to destroy everything Ronan loved. Execution would be justice, would prove Ronan was still Wolf King, still capable of hard choices. But it would also prove Darius right. That power required brutality. That mercy was just weakness. That compassion couldn't survive reality. Alora watched from the edge of the circle, saw Ronan's internal war, saw him struggling between philosophy and instinct, between proving mercy worked and doing what survival demanded, saw the moment he made his choice. Ronan stood, threw the blade away, addressed both armies. My brother broke terms, violated his own challenge, proved that traditionalists value victory over honor. His voice carried across entire battlefield. I could kill him, should kill him, but that would prove his philosophy right. That might makes right. That power requires monstrosity. He looked at Darius. You're exiled. Again. Permanently. Take your warriors and leave. Tell every kingdom on the frontier that Blackridge defended itself. That mercy didn't make us weak. That warriors fighting for something they love are stronger than warriors fighting because someone told them to. Darius stared at him, rage and something else warring in his expression. You're letting me live? Again? After everything? I'm proving you wrong, Ronan said simply. Proving mercy can survive, can defend, can be strong enough to protect empires. His eyes swept the assembled armies. Today Blackridge held against 1,500 warriors, not because we were more brutal, because we fought smarter, because we had something worth protecting. His voice hardened. Anyone who still believes mercy is weakness can test that theory. But know that you'll lose. Same way my brother lost. Same way every kingdom that mistakes violence for strength eventually loses. Silence. Absolute. Shocked. Then slowly, impossibly, Iron Peak's king stepped forward, removed his helm, addressed Ronan directly. We came expecting easy victory. Found warriors who fought like they meant it. Found defenders who wouldn't break despite numbers. His voice was grudging. We withdraw. Not because of mercy. Because continuing costs more than it's worth. Bloodstone's commander agreed. Then Ashenhowl's. One by one, the frontier kingdoms accepted defeat. Not because they'd lost militarily, because continuing would be slaughter that gained nothing, because Blackridge had proven the impossible. That mercy could defend. That compassion didn't make you vulnerable. That warriors fighting for something they loved were more dangerous than warriors fighting because they were afraid not to. The armies began withdrawing, slowly, carefully, keeping weapons ready in case this was trick. Darius stood, stared at his brother. You won today. Congratulations. His voice was empty. But this isn't over. Eventually reality catches up. Eventually wolves come who don't care about philosophy, who just destroy everything soft. And when that happens, when mercy gets everyone killed, remember that I warned you. Then he walked away, following the retreating armies, disappearing into distance, leaving Blackridge's defenders standing in blood-stained snow, exhausted, traumatized, alive. They'd survived. Against impossible odds, against superior numbers, against every rule that said mercy couldn't defend empires. They'd survived because they fought for something worth protecting, because healing had made them stronger instead of weaker, because compassion had given them reason to keep fighting when fear alone would have broken. Alora stood at the edge of the battlefield, surrounded by injured warriors, by people she'd trained, by evidence that everything she'd believed might actually be true. And watching her from across the field, covered in blood and exhaustion, was Ronan, the Wolf King who'd chosen mercy over brutality, evolution over tradition, her over his own brother. He walked toward her, slow, like every step hurt, like he'd aged years in hours of combat. When he reached her, he spoke quietly. We survived. We did, Alora agreed, voice rough from shouting medical orders. Against 1,500, against 3 kingdoms, against my brother and every traditionalist who thought mercy made us weak. Ronan's expression was unreadable. You were right. About everything. Healing did make us stronger. Compassion didn't make us vulnerable. Warriors fighting for something they love are more powerful than warriors fighting because they're told to. I know, Alora said, then smiled, exhausted, triumphant. Now comes the hard part, actually building the kingdom we just died defending. The first thing Alora learned about victory was that it looked exactly like defeat. Bodies scattered across snow, blood turning ice pink in fading light, warriors too exhausted to celebrate, just collapsed where they stood, breathing, alive. wondering how they'd survived when the math said they shouldn't have.
Blackridge had won, technically. The frontier armies had withdrawn. Darius was gone.
The fortress still stood. But victory felt hollow when you counted casualties, when you walked through rows of wounded warriors waiting for treatment, when you realized defending an empire cost pieces of everyone who fought for it. Alora spent the next 3 days doing brutal arithmetic, treating injuries, watching some warriors heal, watching others die despite her best efforts, learning that sometimes survival meant accepting you couldn't save everyone, that mercy had limits, that compassion couldn't undo what violence created. Out of 400 defenders, 73 were dead. Another 112 were injured badly enough they'd never fight again. The numbers were devastating, unsustainable, proof that even winning hurt when you cared about people dying. But here was the thing that separated Blackridge from what it used to be. Every single warrior who died got mourned, not dismissed, not forgotten, not treated like acceptable losses in service to greater strategy. They got names, got stories, got remembered as people instead of numbers in casualty reports. That shift